And we're live. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Last week, we had a panel of Israelis. This week, a panel of Palestinians. If you want to submit questions, you could do that on any of the platforms this is streaming to. We will be prioritizing questions that come through Discord, as well as super chats on YouTube. If you just happen to be watching this and you are Palestinian and you want to spontaneously hop on, you're welcome to join. Just come to our Discord and we'll...
Is anybody speaking?
Can you not hear me?
Yeah, that's stuck.
I hear you.
Okay. So Nizar's having some technical difficulties, but hopefully it's worked out. So yeah, if anybody wants to join the stream spontaneously, just join Discord and we'd love to have you on. Cool. Let's get the show on the road. So maybe we'll just start.
Everybody hearing me? Hello?
Yeah, Nizar, we can hear you. You can't hear us? Okay, it's funny. We've been talking for 10 minutes before going live. The second we go live. Okay, I messaged him. Cool. He left. Nizar, just raise your hand. I guess it's fine. It gives people time for people to join the stream. Cool. Nizar, can you hear us now?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, great.
I hear you.
Okay. Amazing. Cool. So right now we have Nizar, Justin, and Shane. We're going to have Professor Muhammad Dijani joining us soon. We're also meant to have a friend from Gaza, but he does not have electricity right now, so he could not log into internet. So hopefully we bring him on for a session sometime soon. And as I mentioned, if any Palestinian just happens to be watching this and you want to spontaneously hop on, you're welcome to do so. I guess the first question, just a brief introduction, whatever you want to share about yourself, and what's your vision for the land? Like, do you support one state, two states, something in between? I think that'll open up the convo to many interesting threads. Nizar, we'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a Palestinian who was born and raised in Dubai. Studied in Beirut at the American University of Beirut in the 90s, and then moved in 99 with my parents to the West Bank. My father was from Bir Zayt, which is just north of Ramallah. And I lived there 10 years, the last 5 of which I worked with the Palestinian negotiating team. I was responsible for all border-related issues, and therefore I did work on the Gaza disengagement plan on Rafah, Karni, what have you. And then end of 2008, I left, came to the US, did this leadership course that was really very inspiring, so much so that I stayed 1 more year to be a teaching assistant. And since then, I've been training people on leadership, negotiations, and advocacy. And I currently teach part-time negotiations at GW, a graduate course. And I do consult on Palestinian affairs and speak about Palestinian affairs in the media and in think tanks and NGOs.
Thank you, Nizar. Solution for the land.
Yeah, I mean, I'm agnostic. I mean, it matters more to me the result, because whether we have 2 states and then both of them are racist, or 1 state and we just exchange who's oppressing whom, that still doesn't work, right? So we need something like a system of governance that works for all of us. And I think that is because there is also a difference between religious, secular, and what have you, right? It's more than 2. But the premise should be consent and equality and respect for human rights. So all of us need to have that, and how that is exercised is something we're going to need to negotiate.
Thank you, Nizar. Justin, we'll give it over to you.
So I'm also a Palestinian, not too far away from Nizar. My city is just north suburbs of Jerusalem. It's called Beit Hanina. It's part of the municipality of Jerusalem. Some of it is also part of the West Bank. So my city was actually divided. So it's been now separated between the separation wall. So we have family that lives in the West Bank, and we have family that live in the municipality of Jerusalem. I live in between the United States and Beit Hanina. We've had our phone. So my family, I've also lived in Dubai. My family actually has been living in and out of Palestine since the early 1900s. My ancestors actually went to South America like many Palestinians because they went to go do business and deal in the fabric business like many Palestinians did. They came back. Some of them still remain in South America, and some of them are also in the United States. And I'm currently actually in the United States. This is where I work, have a business. I also have been involved in several organizations, as well as I do activist work and things like that. So my background has always been in the Fatah camp, pro-Fatah, when Fatah was a revolutionary movement, not today. I'm still loyal to the cause, but just have a problem with a lot of the leadership and the direction it is. And I was definitely on board with the two-state solution and felt that it was the most pragmatic. Living in the late 90s in Palestine in the early 2000s, I felt like, this is probably the only route. I don't see a one-state solution as feasible immediately. And the reason why is that I accepted it not because I thought it was a just solution. I didn't accept it because I felt that it was the ideal solution for Palestinians. I think it actually gave us the very short end of the stick. It basically turned us into a semi-state. But for me, it was more important to have something on the ground to stand up on and move forward, because our people are stuck. We're stuck because we have an enemy that's a pariah state that's never going to allow us to be free, but we have to do something. Let's see, 20 years later, we're in the situation that we're in right now. I'm not sure if the two-state solution and us continuing to surrender our basic human rights is ideal anymore. I'm inspired by people who came here yesterday and spoke, like Mai. Mai to me was one of the most inspirational people I've heard in a long time, because she said something that just really hit me yesterday. That's something I've just been thinking about for the last 20 months, that we have rights and we demand our full rights. We're equal. And Palestine to me is all Palestine. Haifa, Jaffa, Nablus, all of it, Gaza, this is all Palestine to me. And I think that we as Palestinians today have to take this position that we can no longer play this game of accepting a semi-state, a 1.5 state solution, which has been the only thing that's been offered to us. We've never been offered a two-state solution. And whether this is in the form of a one democratic state where all Palestinians around the world have a right to call home and return to and live equal with with anyone who lives in the country, citizens, or if it's a two-state solution that allows some sort of arrangement where Palestinians can go back and forth and live freely, I'm still up in the air about that. And by the way, Mai Panduk is also someone I admire very much. By the way, I've spoken to her a few times. She's actually a pretty impressive woman as well.
Yes.
So which Mai are you talking about?
I'm talking about Mai
Shahnin. She's from an organization called Satyam. She's currently on day 17 of a hunger strike in solidarity with the people of Gaza. Yeah, very inspiring woman. Great, Shane, and thank you, Justin. Shane, all you.
Hey everyone, thanks very much for having me. So I am also Palestinian. I grew up abroad, so in a small European country, and now I live in another small European country. I'm not actually ethnically Arab, so my family is Armenian, originating from the Armenian quarter of Jerusalem. I've actually never really been to Palestine. We had family in Jordan, which I visited at the time, but we never actually managed to make it to go to Palestine or Israel for that matter. I think from my perspective, I'm open to any solution, kind of like what Nizar was saying, as long as we hit certain milestones, which is equality, human rights, all of these things. But how that actually gets implemented in practice, I think, is very much up for discussion, and I'm open to have that discussion.
Thank you, Shane. So let's see, we have some questions. First of all, this is a quick one. Justin, someone's asking if you're an Israeli citizen.
No, my family was residents, and we ended up losing our residency, and we're still in court trying to regain it. I think my case was deemed hopeless, but some people in my family, they still have the case. It's been pending for about 12 years now. And just for your information, my mom and dad both lost theirs, and they spent the last 20 years of their lives in courts fighting for their residency rights. My father actually lived in Palestine for 40 years before he decided to live abroad, and then he came back. And when he came back, he lost his residency rights. So the last 20 years of his life, he basically was going through a court system to return it. And he was only able to travel back to his home where he was born and lived half his life. He was only able to do that because as a US tourist. And so every 3 months, he would either have to leave the country and come back and be a US tourist.
Thank you. So we have a question from Noam, and it's about the teachings in PA schools. So I'm not sure if this is anybody's area of knowledge, but we'll put it out there. So he's saying he heard that they teach some sketchy things, as he describes it. For example, the PA teaching that Canaanites who settled the land were Arabs from Arabia, and that they called this land Palestine and not any other name since the dawn of history. I've heard this from several Palestinians and even from a professional Palestinian tour guide in Jerusalem. Can anyone confirm if that's true or not?
I certainly can't comment on that one. I don't know what the curriculum is, and I don't know the factuality of what was just stated about the Canaanites.
No, this is a pretty niche question, so it's possible no one here has.
But just quickly, I didn't go through the Palestinian because I was studied in Dubai. But in general, like my cousins and stuff, yes, it says that we are Canaanites. We are the progeny of those people, and there's an argument that the Arabs are Canaanites as well, right? So it's a question of how you define what is or is not Arab, what is or is not Canaanite. But regardless, in general, Palestinians don't they identified with the land and not with an ethnicity. So we don't think of ourselves as a tribe, right? So we Palestinians are all the people that lived on the land, regardless of religion, right? So that's why it's called the Holy Land, right? So it's that particularity. Yes, we were part of the Ottoman Empire, and before that we were part of whatever empire, and those identities were more important in those years than after you had the nation state idea. So once you have the nation state, the particularity of being Palestinian was more evident. And of course, there was the clash with Zionism, and that's why that definition became more prominent. There were some Palestinians that said, no, we're Arabs first, and this is an Arab issue, right? Our region is Palestine, but we are Arabs. And there were those who were saying, no, we need to say that we are Palestinians in order to defend our land. So that is a question of degree. The other thing about what I think what you're referring to is incitement or misinformation. In general, all education in the Arab world is one thing. Most, I would say all of them actually, have bad ministries of education that do not teach thinking or critical thinking, and definitely push to the idea of obedience and conformism. But at the same time, it's not what informs or animates what Palestinians think. So nobody takes that civic education seriously because they understand that there's this power dynamic. It's mostly your family, your extended family, that identity. So for those who are more, for example, religious, right? Islamic identity is more important. I have an Assyrian friend who's from Jerusalem, Palestinian Assyrian, and his Assyrian identity is very important to him. Like he is Palestinian and he was part of the Palestinian negotiating team and Assyrian, right? So the education becomes has very little impact or effect on what Palestinians think.
Maybe I can also add that thought because I'm also Armenian and Palestinian, and the Armenian identity is also extremely important to the Armenians of Jerusalem, but still yet identify with the city of Jerusalem and the land of Palestine.
I was gonna actually mention that, and about Shane. Shane, as you said, he's an Armenian. See, Palestinians, we don't see ourselves necessarily as one identity. And when the term they say Palestine Arabiya, sometimes this is troublesome to me because we have these Armenian communities who've been there for hundreds of years. We have the Samaritans. We have other cultures. For example, I believe it was Hassan Emmanuel. It was the PLO ambassador, Nazar, helped me sometimes.
In London.
In London, yeah. Hassasian, yeah. For example, he was an Armenian who was the PLO ambassador. So my wife went to a Palestinian public school. I didn't. I went through an American school system. And it's interesting because when I talk to her about history, she says that you know more about Palestinian history than I do. I don't think history is emphasized in Palestinian schools. And I love it when Israelis throw out Muhammad al-Hussein or Amin al-Hussein. Because I don't think, in our house, we knew who Yasser Arafat, we knew Jamal Abdel Nasser, we knew Abdel Qadir al-Husseini. These are the names that were thrown out. Hajj Amin al-Husseini wasn't someone that I knew until an Israeli told me about it. He's not somebody whose pictures are in our houses or in our history books and things. And it's interesting because when I look at his history, a 26-year-old college dropout whose parents wanted him to go do religious, and he decided to go into politics and was appointed by the British. His history is just like all over the place. So I find that these arguments and these positions are to teach us that we're indoctrinated. And I think Palestinians are pretty, I would say the opposite. Arab history, and what Nizar was saying, actually teaches us that Arabs come from Yemen. I've heard this thing that Arabs originally came from Yemen. And this is in Arabic culture. And even like the people from the Gulf, sometimes they refer to Palestinians as Chatayat Roman. You know what Chatayat Roman means? It means like the leftover garbage of the Roman Empire, and that we were later Arabized. So we're not the real Arabs. And I think Rafi, who was a presenter that's come here many times, gave an awesome presentation about the DNA of the people, of the Jews and the Palestinian Arabs. And he actually confirmed that some of the first traces of Arabs was actually in southern Palestine, Jordan area, and later it descended down to the Gulf. So our own history has betrayed us, in a sense, telling us that our ancestry Palestinian identity is made up of not just Arab history, but Jewish history. There are some people today, Palestinians, who are descendants, especially in the Galilee, who you'll find are descendants. So this is our identity.
Yeah, but Jewish doesn't. You can be Arab and Jewish. There are plenty of Arab Jews. Right? So
absolutely, but it was incorporated into Palestinian identity. So Palestinian identity is not just a monolithic sort of. This is my point. So it includes our Armenian brothers, the Circassians, because these are people who have lived hundreds of years on our land and have incorporated, and even some of the Jewish people who lived in Palestine for hundreds of years, they were incorporated into our society.
So that, just so that you know, the legal definition or the political definition is that the PLO said anybody who was living in Palestine before 1948 is considered Palestinian, right? So history has very little impact on it. Is the people who live there with the richness of all the history, right? So that's I think what is more important to us. So for example, as Shane mentioned, or Justin, there was also Albert Aghazarian. He was the head of public relations at Birzeit University, and he was one of the Palestinian negotiators in Madrid, right? He represents Palestinians, and he happens to be Armenian Palestinian, right? So it can also be an adopted identity. There are, for example, the family Rock, my friend Badr Rock. You'd think Badr is an Islamic name, but it's not. He's actually Christian, and they are Crusader leftovers. They can, like they're a French family, right? A French name. They came with the Crusades and they just stayed, right? So Palestinians are all of these people, and he happens to be now from Nazareth. So that the current contemporary Palestinian identity has more to do with the identification of, they actually have pieces of land, they actually have roots, they actually have ancestors that go several generations back that lived there, right? So for them, this is home, right? So, and their home is home where they speak Arabic. So that's the other thing, is that while there are Arab tribes, the reference to Arabs is more the cultural Arabs, right? So some of the best and most prominent Arab, philosophers and literary, stars are not ethnically Arab. They were either Maronite or even Persian, right? So there is this definition of Arab that has to do more with the culture. So Arab Islamic or Arab, just as much as the pride that Christian Arabs have with the fact that Christianity is an Eastern religion, right? So you had Christian Arabs and Christian kingdoms, Sassanid, right, before Islam, right? So a lot of their Palestinian identity has to do with differentiating themselves from Western Christianity, and the fact that they find it offensive that Western Christians are trying to tell them how they should live their lives as Christians, when for them, they are the original Christians, right? So Jesus is Palestinian from their perspective. So the identity, that's where I agree with Justin, that it's not one identity, it's several identities, but the common denominator is the people that lived on the land, and to whom this land means something, right? So they lived there, they built their houses, they had families, and so on and so forth.
And to put that into technical terms, I guess what we're saying is that Palestinian is more of a demonym as opposed to an ethnicity.
What's a demonym?
Yeah, I don't know what that word is. What is that?
It means people that live in a particular geographic region.
Yeah.
Sure.
And for that matter, there is a lot that has to do with just bloodlines, in the fact that, for example, and this is something a lot of Israelis don't understand, Palestinians are extremely regional, right? I'm from Birzeit, and we're on a hill, right? So we call it a mountain, of course, because it's, like 900 meters, 800 meters. And we don't marry from the village down in the valley because we're better than them, right? Like there is so much local identity that is important. So when people look at, we get offended when people look at Palestine or Israel as real estate. Oh, you could live somewhere else. It's like, no, I don't want to live somewhere else, right? While somebody who's coming from New York can live in a settlement in Jerusalem or live in the Galilee, they don't care, right? But for us, no, we actually care. We think we're better than people from Nablus and people from Hebron. We make fun of people from Hebron, right? So there's that aspect of identity where when people say, oh, well, you can go live in Jordan, it's like, we're not from Jordan. No, we don't want to live in Jordan because that's not who we are, right? So it's that element of self-determination, which is we don't want to live in a land, we want to live in our land, right? And this is something that also a lot of Americans don't understand, because America doesn't have a national identity. It has a political identity. It's people who live in the US and decided to live in this life this country that has all of these values. For people in the East, no, your roots matter a lot. They have a lot of your identity has to do with the roots and the history of your ancestors. It's not just, oh, well, we live here and this new generation is no longer, whatever.
Nizar, I think the other issue is that the saying that, you have 22 Arab countries and there's only one Jewish. And I kind of tell people, like, and like I said, as I told you, I have family in South America. And I have, I've been to Mexico and things. Now, people in South America and people in Mexico speak the same language. They both speak Spanish, but the cultures are really extremely different. So you're not going to take a Guatemalan and an Argentinian and a Spaniard and put them in the room and expect these people to live in the same place, to eat the same food. And they speak Spanish if they're predominantly Catholic. And it's sort of this notion that, hey, you Palestinians can just go live in Iraq. You can go live in Morocco. I mean, I don't know about you, but Morocco to me is as foreign as, and like I said, we both lived in Dubai. I know that you lived in the Gulf, but I spent time in Greece and Turkey, and I felt way more at home in Greece and Turkey than I did in Dubai. The customs, the way people would touch their noses and stuff, I was like, when my first nose came into my face, I was like, back away. So, and this is sort of how should I say it? Orientalism. And I think that a lot of Israelis bring this, like, well, you can go to Iraq, you can go to Morocco. I don't get this. And this is why I'm saying that this is a common thing that you just hear all the time. I think Gil had a great question, Adar, if you don't mind me moving on to the next question.
Yeah, sure. Feel free to read it
Gil
out.
asked the question because when I was speaking, hold on, I have to go back. Everybody's chatting, so can we cool down on the chat because we want to focus on the discussion, if you don't mind. Anyways, he says, I didn't understand Justin's point about not being offered a true two-state solution. What was missing in the 2000 Barak Arafat offer? And I think there's nobody better than Nazar who can answer this question. So he asked me that question, but I'm passing this to Nazar because he was there and he was part of that team.
What Barak offered was 90% of the West Bank, but more importantly, it didn't have borders with Jordan. It was 3 areas disconnected from each other, and you didn't have control over the airspace, water, and the borders, right? So that's something that, again, a lot of, and it continued to be a problem when we were in negotiations even in Annapolis in 2008 and 9, or 2007 and 8, where the problem was that the Palestinians were negotiating over how do we get a Palestinian state, and let's reverse engineer that. And the Israelis were coming from, we gave the Palestinians those areas of autonomy. Let's see how we can expand those in return for you Palestinians delivering on security, right? So the Israeli perspective was open-ended, while from the Palestinians it was no. We wanted to get to a specific point, which is a fully sovereign Palestinian state, maybe demilitarized, sure, but definitely sovereign, not autonomous. While in general, all of Israeli politicians, at least all elected politicians, have been consistent in offering only autonomy. None of them, even Barak, never actually envisaged, even Perez, even Perez, envisaged some sort of autonomy, sovereignty minus, but not real sovereignty, right? So that continued to be a fundamental problem, which I would argue needed to be solved first, that we needed to agree on the principle that Palestinians wanted full sovereignty, not autonomy. And because that was not clarified from the beginning, everything that came afterwards was never connecting because they were starting from different points.
Thanks, Nizar. And we do have the map pulled up if people want to see the plan.
So can you hear me, Adar?
Yep, loud and clear.
Hello? I think my internet is...
Yeah, we could hear you.
Okay, because my internet has everybody frozen. But anyway, so Nazar, I shared a map here, and I think this map is this is from Shaul Arieli, who does a lot of these cool maps. And I think this outlines the proposal that was presented. And this is Gil to me. Is Gil still here? I don't see him. Is he still here?
No, maybe maybe not.
Asked,
but it's recorded. He can watch it after the fact.
Yeah. So the thing is that, and the reason why I brought this up is that this is the thing that's thrown in our face all the time, is that Palestinians, and I think Jared Kushner who said they never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity or something like that.
That was Abba Iban.
Oh, it was Abba Iban. Okay. Yes, you're
Israeli ambassador to the UN. He's South African. And he said that back in the 60 something.
Okay, I see. Yeah, you're right. But it was Jared Kushner. Remember when he presented the Trump?
All of them repeat the mantra. Yeah, it's convenient mantra.
Yeah,
because it's not their responsibility.
And I think that Gil said this to me because, and I've spoken to Gil many times here, and I think that this is the reason is because it's one of the biggest misconceptions that even we gave you guys Gaza and you didn't make a state. You could have made a Singapore. Mm-hmm. And, I think we were working on something called the 10 biggest misconceptions about Palestine. And these were one of them is Gaza could have been a Singapore. You've been offered 2 states, but you've never accepted it. And this is why I was saying that I'm coming to the point in my life where even me as a Palestinian, I started to accept substandard conditions because I just wanted to move forward. I'm just tired of the occupation. I'm tired of the militarism. I'm tired of the families being torn apart, my own family being torn apart and separated, not being able to live in the same city because I just want to move forward. But I'm beginning to question because it feels like the more and more I give, it's still not enough. And I don't know what's going to satisfy this occupation beast. That's this like animal that's like, you just can't satisfy it. He's going to want more and
This is
more.
an important point. Yeah. So this is another important disconnect is, and this is something that we did communicate over and over in negotiations, that from our perspective as Palestinians, when we declared our state in 1988 in Algiers in the parliament in exile, we accepted to exercise our right of self-determination on 22% of what we considered our homeland, right? So from our perspective, this was not fair. This was a realpolitik, and we did it in the service of peace, because we did not want to stay refugees and stay in conflict for another 200, 300 years. We said 22% of something is better than 100% of nothing. And therefore, when the Israelis were arguing for giving us less than the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, we were arguing like, we cannot compromise on the compromise, right? That was already not fair. Now, from the Israeli perspective, and the Zionist perspective specifically, right? Because the boundaries of Israel are not defined, and the pillar, or like the basis is historical rights, a safe haven, right? The 1948 borders are very difficult, or they would argue indefensible, right? So from their perspective, all of the sovereign arguments of the Palestinians mean nothing if the result is something that makes Israelis not safe. And because Israelis and the Zionists, like the whole premise is Jews are sick and tired of being vulnerable every time because they are a minority, right? Because their safety depends on somebody else. The lesson they learned is they need to be able to protect themselves by themselves, right? So it was all about the new Jew. So the concept of giving Palestinians the 1967 borders, right, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and putting Israel in a militarily inferior position is not acceptable. When we argued with them, you can build as many walls as you want, and you can occupy all the lands you want, so long as you don't address the intent of the other side of attacking you, you will never be able to stay safe. And October 7th was a case in point, that what you need to work on is to deny the Palestinians the reasons why they would want to fight Israel. And therefore, arguing safe boundaries, there are no safe boundaries. There are boundaries between states that are not at war, or preferably at peace. And that's why one of the Palestinian arguments in order to address the issue of security was for Israel and Palestine to join NATO, so that they're part of the same alliance. You have Turkey and Greece that hate each other, but because they are part of the same security apparatus, right, or security coalition, that addresses the security concerns of Israel and Palestine, right? And that's why the Palestinians accepted demilitarization when they didn't need to. That is a concession that is not a right for Israel to ask for. This is, again, something the Palestinians did in order to make Israelis feel safe, or feel that the Palestinians are just as much invested in Israeli security as Palestinians are. But the 99% of the Israelis are not satisfied with that. They want to be able to protect themselves by themselves, right? And that is an internal Israeli conversation. And part of, like part of my cynicism, or lack of my pessimism, is that I don't see that conversation in Israel. There is still this myth that Israel is going to be able to protect itself by itself. The fact that, Israel ran out of munitions by December 2023, and basically without the US, there was no war, right? It would have ended back in December, is not relevant, right? They don't see that. And that's a problem. That's why I think we need to discuss there are basic elements we need to discuss before we go into what does the solution look like. If the criteria for the solution is that Israel needs to be able to protect itself by itself, and Palestinians need to, so the principle is that Palestinians get land based on how well they perform on security, right? We're not going to get anywhere, right? Because either you have a right to self-determination, when you put it conditional on security, that's a non-starter. The American revolutionaries did not need the permission of the British, or they convinced the British that the Britain would be safe from the Americans before they got sovereignty, right? So that's another thing.
I see a question here from Rachel that I think it often comes up, and I find it quite interesting. She's asking, isn't much of Palestinian mandate now part of Jordan? How is the homeland defined?
So that has to do with how you define the mandate. So after the British took over the Ottoman territories, the British and the French, what came to become Iraq, Jordan, and Palestine, all of that was under British mandate, right? Now, the Zionists argue that the mandate of Palestine was all the area from Transjordan and Palestine, right? Not everybody agrees with that, but it is true that between 1922 and 1923, the British did draw the line between Palestine and Transjordan. So before 1922, you did not have the definition of Palestine as west of the River Jordan and Transjordan being east of the River Jordan. Sure, yes. But as I mentioned before, the Palestinians of Jerusalem, Nazareth, and Beersheba never thought of themselves as Jordanian. And for that matter, the Jordanian, the country of Jordan was established by the family that was ruling Hijaz, Mecca and Medina. And they lost to the Saudi tribe. And as a consolation prize, the British gave, Hussein, the grandfather, gave them Jordan and Iraq, Transjordan and Iraq. So the Hashemites are not even Jordanian to begin with. So there's all of that history that a lot of people don't realize. That's why the borders of Arab countries, save for Egypt and not even Iraq, I would say, probably just only Egypt has borders that arguably is a national border, maybe Morocco, but all the other borders are really arbitrary and not, in the eyes of Arabs, they're not really borders. This is something that it became a nation state, and they, after 3 generations, they consider themselves Algerian, Tunisian, Lebanese, Jordanian. But it's very easy to undermine that the way ISIS did, arguing, well, actually, none of these borders were sovereign borders. These were not borders that we put. These are borders that were put by the colonialists. And of course, a case in point is how across the borders, it's the same tribe. Anyway, so that's
also, like the map in the chat, I put up a few maps, and I just wanted to explain something. Altoid's map is listing Jordan, and I know a lot of Zionists will say, look, you guys got 60-70% because of all this land mass. But we know that the map that I put, if you look at where the major cities were, they were cities, almost like literally walking distance from the River Jordan. That's where the population was based and stuff. So the east of these cities is pretty much empty Jordan. Jordan is, you go east, it's almost empty. So there was a lot of, like, for example, Assault. Assault is a city that's extremely close to the River Jordan. And I believe, I keep forgetting the name of the city in the south. What's the name of the city? Madaba. مش العقبة, where the famous battle that took place.
Madaba.
Karak. Yeah, so Al-Karak. So for example, if you go to Al-Karak, you'll find a lot of families that are Khalaila because they used to, go back and forth between Al-Khalil and Karak. If you go to Assault, you'll find a lot of people. They have family for Zu'aybi family. Zu'aybi family is available. It's they're there in Assault, but they're also available in Nazareth. They're also available in Nablus. So the cities that were part of this Jordan, where actually people lived, were cities that were like I said, you can see them. Like when you drive and when you're going from Jericho to Tiberias, you can actually see these cities off the road. So, but if you go further into Jordan, it's empty. It's pretty much empty. And so I think that the map, when pro people say, look, we did partition it and Jordan got 90%. That's not where the people live, because if you look at the map that I'm showing, it's going to tell you where actually people lived. And there was already a transfer. And after the 1948 war in Nakba, you'll find that I think it was 2/3 of Palestinian refugees still stayed on the land that was from the river to the sea. So the transfer already happened, but it's like now we're negotiating the transfer. So we're negotiating the transfer and the compromise. And I think this is one of the big traps that we set ourselves up with when we said we accept a two-state solution on the 1967 border. That was meant to be the solution, not the basis of the solution, and then shift the borders. And Nazar said, you were saying that in 1988, the PLO agreed to this two-state solution as a way to step forward. But in 1988, and I would even go so far to say in 1993, the reality on the ground was so different. There was not even 250,000 Israeli Jews who lived in Palestinian, what was to be designated a Palestinian state.
Yeah.
Today, we're at 800. Ehud Olmert said, the number 1 million, once it's reached it, that's it. There's no going back. And I think that we're probably about a few years away from that, where once we have almost 1 million Jews that live in the West Bank, the two-state solution is going to be impossible. And this is why it was never, at the same time why Israel was talking about a solution, what I call a 1.5 state solution, they sabotaged themselves. And this is something that they did it on purpose because they wanted to sabotage a two-state solution, and they succeeded.
I think to expand on something you were just saying, I saw in the chat that Rachel asked a question about whether there's any reality where Jordan gives some land back to Palestine in the event of a two-state solution. Would Palestinians want that? And I'm keen to hear what the other panelists have to say, but I don't think that makes sense to me. As Nizar was saying earlier, he's from Birzeit, that's his village. They don't want another different village or a different piece of land. I think it's important to frame this in terms of people came from a specific area and they want to be in that area, in the land where their ancestors are from. And that's just a very, very important point.
That kind of reminds me, when I was in university, New York was the biggest Jewish city in the world. Tel Aviv didn't have the number yet. And I said, someone said the same thing to me. Well, why not just make it in Jordan? I said, okay, how about a Jewish state in New York? There's more Jews in New York than there are in Tel Aviv. And it's ridiculous sometimes when you hear these questions.
But also, there's the issue of like the Israeli population is a majority immigrant population, right? So for them, they are immigrating into a place, so they want to live in a place where they can be safe and live there. For us, it's not. It's like we've been living here. We're not interested in living anywhere else. The question is, on what basis are we going to live, right? So I think a big chunk of my pessimism is my realization of the extent to which Israelis are completely barking up the wrong tree. Like they have absolutely no idea how ill-informed they are about what Palestinians want and don't want, right? So I hate Hamas just as much as the next guy, but Hamas is not the problem. The problem is that Hamas is making sense. Hamas is the symptom. It's not the problem, right? It's easy, of course, to vilify Hamas and, once we get rid of Hamas, everything's going to be okay. Well, they said the same thing about the PLO in 1982. Once we get rid of the PLO in Lebanon, everything's okay. You still have the problem of actual people that are not members of the Zionist project that are not having their full rights. How are we going to have these rights? Is it through an actual Palestinian state or through one state where your ethnic or religious identity is inconsequential to your civic rights? And that continues to be something that Zionists hold on to, which is positive discrimination. And all states do that. So the French discriminate against non-French people, right? The thing is, what about the people that are not Zionists, that have been living there forever, right? Why does any Jew, any person that has one grandparent that is Jewish gets the right to have citizenship in the land between the river and the sea, and somebody who was born in Birzeit 1934 needs to get a visa from this Russian or whatever, or New Yorker, right? As long as that's the criterion, is that this is a land where Jews have superior rights because they are Jewish, I don't know how you square that triangle. But I don't think it's going to happen.
I think my family example was that, I mean, no offense to Adar. Adar just said, he was born in New York, right? Adar was born in New York. You're an Israeli citizen today, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I just told you that my mother and father the first 40 years of their lives, born in Jerusalem, the city where their grandparents, I mean, I can go to my great-great-grandfather's grave and show you and say, hey, he was here. In fact, we still have my great-grandfather's home that was built in the 1500s. It's still there. It's still there. And they lost their right to live in their country. It's crazy. And this is part of the issue that we have. And it's like these fundamental things that you know, I'm glad Adar, he's a good guy. We're happy to have him. But at the same time, there's a problem when someone like Adar can come and say, I'm a citizen and have full rights, but you, family going back a few hundred years, almost 1,000 years, you know, sorry, tough luck. There's a problem with that system. That's just inherently unjust.
I'm one of what they
What's your
call.
family name?
I'm one of the good. I'm one of the good colonizers, as they say.
But still a colonizer. He acknowledges it. See?
You know, although my
family.
But I think
You're a colonizer, but we'll have you.
Yeah, but I think you said you had family before.
yeah, my family moved from Vilna, Lithuania in 1812. So my family came way prior to Herzl Zionist movement.
Justin, what's your family name?
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
I haven't.
I need to know which kind of racism to apply on you.
I have an interesting
Ya
question.
Allah.
So, you know, I identify as Israeli American. What if I wanted to start identifying also as Palestinian? Because, you know, technically I live in the land of Israel and Palestine. Would I be co-opting an identity, or would you guys accept that if I start identifying that way?
I would accept you. Yeah.
Okay. I think based on the discussion we had earlier, I'm open to that.
Cool.
That
I'm
it's
sorry,
more of a
Adar, my computer keeps zoning out. You asked something and I didn't hear that. Can you repeat that?
I asked how you
It's in
guys
the
would.
chat.
Could I apply? No, sorry, I'm reading Altar's thing. Not apply. Altar's is saying I would need to apply for citizenship to become Palestinian. But I'm not talking about a citizen of Palestine. I'm talking about a person who lives on the land. So I consider this land. I'm in the Galilee. I call it Israel. But others call it Palestine, and I'm cool with that. And I call the entire land from the river to the sea. It's the land of Israel and Palestine. Let people, you know, call it how they want. So can I identify as an Israeli Palestinian? Like, would that be an offensive? Would that be offensive, or can I do that?
Here's the thing: we have people. We know that after 1492, when Jews were, Muslims and Jews were both kicked out of Spain, we know that the Ottoman Empire took Jews in and allowed them to. So migration has been a part of Palestinian society, and Armenians came. The Druze, for example, the Druze were originally from Egypt. They're not Levant origins. They were escaping the Fatimids in Egypt, and they settled. And today, a Druze will never tell you that he's Egyptian. He's 100% Levantine, and they're very proud of that heritage. I don't necessarily have a problem with anyone coming and contributing to Levant culture and Palestinian civilization, because that's what we've been about for thousands of years. This is who we are today. But what I do have a problem is that we have an immigration policy right now that is specific for one group of people, and denying not just new immigration for new people, but of course they do allow new but as long as it's not Palestinian. So it's always been a part of our civilization and our culture. We've never been a close society. The Circassians that you go to, the 4 villages that we have up and near where you are in the Galilee, go ask them where they came from, when they came. And the Druze, like I said, there's so many cultures that have come and settled. So I don't know why that would be a problem today.
Okay, I'm gonna sleep on this, but I might start identifying as Jewish Israeli Palestinian. I think we gotta make.
Just to answer Rocksteady Jew, he had considering. Oh, go ahead.
No, please go for it.
Yeah, so he's saying my family lived in Jerusalem since at least the 1600s. They're all buried at the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. So it's offensive when you guys call Jews colonizers. Yeah. So we wouldn't consider your family a colonizer. We consider the Europeans and the Russians that came, right? So for us, you would be Palestinian because you happen to live, your family happened to live in the land between the river and the sea before May 1948, right? So again, that's why it's important to understand which lens people are using when they decide who is or is not a colonizer.
think I also mentioned Jews. I did say Armenians. I don't know of any Assyrians, to be honest with you. I haven't come across any Assyrian communities in Palestine. Maybe I'm off. Is it Assyrian? Oh, okay. So I'm correct. I even know that we have Kurdish. We even have Gypsies. So I mean, there is never. Listen, Palestinian history. Palestine has never been without Jews, and I think Palestinians know this.
Yes.
So there's never been a history. There's never been a time in Palestine where there were, except I guess before Jews, but that there was never Jews. So I don't know why this should be an issue. And if you have family that was buried in Jerusalem or anywhere, that's because yes, they were there. They've always been there.
I'd like
Nizar, you're quite. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to just add something about this because I do see there's a conversation in chat about how could we be colonizers if we're indigenous. I think one way to kind of to reconcile that is these are not two mutually exclusive categories. I think you can describe Zionism as an indigenous rights movement, but also settler colonial movement. So you could be both indigenous to the land, yet having returned to land through a settler colonial movement. They're not at all contradictory, and I would say that is probably the fairest way to describe Zionism, an indigenous rights movement that also engaged in settler colonialism to achieve its goals.
Did I lose connection again?
No, we hear you. You might not hear us, but we could hear you.
No, I hear you now. I was going to say, so if an Italian from New York, we're going to use the New York example, right? Because New York is a good example. If an Italian family migrated to New York and lived there for, say, 300 years, since they've lived there since the 1700s, and they decide that, hey, we're going to go reestablish our Italian community back in Italy. Italy is not going to be the same country that it was when their ancestors left. Now, are they colonizers? Technically, yes, they are. Are they indigenous? Yes, they are, because they are still Italian. So, it's like they go and they tell these Italian people who've been there for, since the 1700s, hey, sorry, this was our town 300 years ago. We've decided we're going to reestablish our community. And, basically you need to pack up your bags and move. And I mean, I know it's a silly example, but it's kind of what happened. They came back, and now Italy is diverse. They have people from Albania. They have people from North Africa. They have people from all these different countries. And Italy is definitely not the same demographics that it was 300-400 years ago. It's changed a lot. I mean, have you been to Rome lately? It doesn't look like, it's the people from all parts of the world now.
Yeah.
But also you have a lot of Italians that are not okay with that either, right? So I would just caution us how people define things differently, right?
What I'm just saying is that it's possible to be indigenous and a colonizer at the same time. And that was
I'll give you an example. So while Zionism was a European idea, it doesn't mean that Eastern Jews did not adopt it. So you had Iraqi, Egyptian, Lebanese, Moroccan Jews that were Zionists back before 1948. In Jerusalem, for example, and this is something that I learned just by happenstance. I wanted to go to the Prisoners Museum in Jerusalem, which is in Abu Dis. And Google sent me to the Prisoners Museum. That was the Jewish Prisoners Museum, which is in close to the Damascus Gate. And there I learned that there was this Kurdish Iraqi Jew that was a fervent Zionist that was jailed by the British because of his quote unquote terrorism. And he blew himself up to kill two British soldiers. So that person, sacrificed himself because he believed so there are a lot of Eastern Jews, right? Arab Jews that want, Yemeni Jews, right? That want to have a Jewish state and want to be part of a Jewish state where they can be Jewish and not feel like a minority. And there are those that do not, that want to be Arab Jews, right? So you have Asaf David, who is a Yemeni Jew, but wants to have a Jewish state. And you have Alon Misrahi, who's an Arab Jew and wants to be an Arab Jew, does not want to be Israeli because he doesn't believe in Zionism, right? So the actual difference is Zionism versus, so Zionists are colonizers, Jews are not necessarily, right? So that conflation is also important to unpack.
And I want to just make one more clarification, because I see in chat a lot of people are conflating colonization and settler, or colonialism and settler colonialism. These are actually two distinct concepts. And it's true, Zionism is not colonialism, but it fits neatly into the category of settler colonialism. And here's just a quick 3 sentences that ChatGPT summarized for me. But colonialism is when a foreign power controls a territory, often exploiting its people and resources for economic or strategic gain, but without necessarily intending to live there permanently. Settler colonialism, on the other hand, involves outsiders moving in to permanently settle the land, often displacing or replacing the indigenous population in the process. The goal isn't just control, it's to make the land their new home. So Zionism does neatly fall into that category. And there's many other instances of settler colonialism, and some of them are similar in nature. So Liberia, for example, was descendants of slaves, of American slaves that wanted to recreate a homeland in Africa. Now, granted, not all of them were taken from Liberia, but it was still the general region of their homeland. And they moved en masse to Liberia. And that is widely recognized to be a settler colonial movement that also did not work out so well. So this isn't, we need to understand these are two separate terms, and this isn't unique to how Zionism is described. There's at least a dozen other settler colonial movements, and they have a similar nature to Zionism. The biggest difference is Zionists have roots on the land and returned after thousands of years. So Liberia would be similar in that sense, but you do have many other instances of groups of people coming without being sent by a mother colony, without extracting resources to send it back to the mother nation. We have many instances of this, and this is widely described as settler colonialism. And then because I'm not really meant to be on this panel, I'll stop talking for now. But I just wanted to clarify that.
But you also have the laws. Like, when was the last time a land was confiscated from a Jew in Israel, right? The land is confiscated from Palestinians and then given to settlers, right, who are from New York or from Russia, right? So there is an actual act of usurpation of land, usurpation of resources, and giving it to somebody else, right? So that's why, I mean, and like Zionists are not, they're not hiding it. The whole idea is to populate the land and settle the land and redeem the land. For many, it's because it's Jewish land and everybody else is less than, they're Gentiles, right? And for other people, it's like, no, because they need to have the space. They are the ones who can use the space better, right? It's a utilitarian argument, and that the Arabs are backwards and the Jews are much more, they're smarter and much more entrepreneurial. Either way, both those scenarios, the Arab and the Palestinian gets less rights than somebody who's Jewish, who has 7-8 generations living in New York, but now decided to live here, or like in Palestine, Israel.
I think maybe if I can try and offer a hypothetical parallel, and let's see how this goes down with the panel. But imagine if after the Armenian genocide, there was such a large influx of Armenians into Palestine that they then just declared that this is a new Armenian state. And that technically would have meant that there were Armenians in Palestine for about approximately a couple of thousand years. They were not a minority. They were a majority. They were a very small minority. But then there was an influx of Armenians from outside, and then suddenly they decided, okay, this is going to be the new Armenia. I feel like that, to me, is, that would kind of be an unacceptable situation for the rest of the population living in that land of Palestine. And I think to me, that seems like a fair parallel to how Israel came about in some ways.
It's interesting because the same people who have a problem with the term colonizers with Israel will gladly use it toward the Palestinians to say, well, you're Arab colonizers. And that goes back to my list of the 10 misconceptions. I need to really work on this list, by the way, is that we are colonizers from the 7th century, that we came, that there was no no Arab-speaking people, nothing, that the Palestinians are the Arab conquerors that came from Mecca and Medina and brought Islam to Palestine. Oh, and Noam said it. By the way, I said this before Noam's comment, so I knew he was going to pull out the colonizer card. So it's like, we're colonizers, but you're not colonizers. But so it's interesting.
Yeah, I guess I'm quite unique, but I never understand why people get so triggered by some language. It's like we're just need we
Because it's derogatory.
Yeah,
Think
but
of it
it's just
derogatory.
we need like, and I'm not saying this is only one side does it, but I'm more aware when I see it happening on the pro-Israel side that we get caught in these. We try to like win an argument on like a technicality. Well, technically we're not settler colonizers because we used to live there, but how exactly is that meant to change the dynamic with how Palestinians perceive our presence? You know, when a population's coming in mass, claiming land for their own, the native population is never going to accept that. They've never accepted it. They never will. So saying like the rejection to that term is, in my opinion, missing the point. I do think it's relevant to talk about the fact that we come from this land as a way for reconciliation with Palestinians. So, hey guys, we're both from this land. Let's find a way to live here together. I think that's relevant, but there's no reason for Palestinians to just accept Zionism how it manifested because we came from here. So it's trying to like win the argument on a technicality when rather, and we're ignoring the actual real human dynamic that leads to violence in almost all instances.
And I think the same thing happens with what's going on in Gaza right now as well, where is it technically a genocide? Is it this? Is it that? But at the same time, millions of people are starving and dying, and you know that needs to stop regardless of what it is, what you want to call it, right?
I also
Exactly.
Rachel wrote a comment here. She said that there's a deep breakdown in understanding between Jews and Arabs. I'm assuming she means Palestinians. I think that most really believe Jews did Zionism to assert Jewish supremacy. I'm sorry, I'm reading this wrong. I don't think most Jews view this in that way. I kind of would argue, I would say that to me, Zionism equals Jewish supremacy. I mean, some of the principles of Zionism, like I actually admire it, like building a nation, a homeland, and a society. These are things that I want for Palestine, for Palestinians to do. But it's, to me, Zionism, you know, like for example, if you see some of the videos today, the road between Nablus and Ramallah for the last 3 days has been a nightmare. People, not only are the towns being attacked, but people on the roads, they're setting fires and cars on the road. And now, finally, the Israeli army is trying to like go after these settlers. But you think now it's because settlers know that they can do this. They can set fires to Palestinian towns and kill people. We lost 4 people the other day. We lost a 13-year-old aspiring boxer in Kufr Malik the other day. Dead with, you know, he's a lot of family, by the way, in the United States here. Some of them who are married to relatives of mine. And I'm just saying is that this is the thing. This is the problem that we have. Zionism to me is Jewish supremacy. And this has been, it's just this notion that you are Palestinian, you should accept less. And it's almost like Palestinians have embraced this. Like, why do we want a demilitarized state that Israel controls they can control who's our immigration, who we can say is a Palestinian, who can go back and forth from Jordan, why people from Gaza can't come to the West Bank and live. Why can't we bring our people from the West Gaza to come and live in the West Bank until this crazy genocidal war is over? These same Zionists will say, why isn't Egypt taking them? But a better question is, when the people escaped the South, when the Hamas attacked on October 7th, we didn't say, hey, why doesn't Cyprus take them? No, you guys took them and you put them in hotel rooms in Tel Aviv. And the people in the north that were being bombed by Hezbollah were put up at hotels in Tel Aviv. Let us put up our people in hotels in Bethlehem and Al Khalil. We will welcome them in the West Bank and we will take care of them until you guys end this war. But no, you guys want to ship them off to Egypt and to Rwanda or wherever countries you guys want to send us to, because your motivation is not to care about people or Palestinians. It's about establishing Jewish supremacy on our land.
Control, because the majority of Zionists, they want to be able to control their fate, and they cannot control their fate if they're not a majority, right? That's the premise. So they don't understand, from their perspective, they don't understand why you as Arabs, right, don't live in Iraq or Jordan or whatever, when Jews only have Israel where they can live their Jewish life and not worry that the majority is gonna deny. Like just in the 90s, American Jews didn't dare wear the kippah in New York, you know? So I mean, so that's the thing. Now, it's easy for us to tell Jews, well, I mean, it sucks to be you. We happen to be a majority Arabs in this land. Unless you want to kill us all, you're never gonna be a majority. That's a premise that the majority of Zionists do not accept. Now, they feed themselves tales that they can, like there's the part of the problem that's stuck is that there are too many Israelis that think that they can continue to control the Palestinians, right? They genuinely believe so. They believe that they are smarter, they are stronger, and every 10 to 15, and which is the Sharon school, right? Which is they think that every 10 or 15 years, the Arabs are gonna revolt, we beat them up, and they shut up, we pacify them, and then another 10 to 15 years, and that's why Israel needs to live by the sword, because these people will never accept us. Jabotinsky, right? Fortress Israel. What we argue is that this is not sustainable. I wish you looked at just the trajectory from 1948 till now. Palestinians are only becoming more lethal. More Israelis are getting killed by Palestinians in proportion. So extrapolating that does not look good for Israel, but somehow that is not something that they calculate.
The issue is, and I want to go back to what I was saying earlier, like look at what Noam is saying. He says the houses at Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan were historically Jewish ones, Jewish houses of families that were ethnically cleansed. And it's interesting that there's a law in Jerusalem that if a home was owned by Jews before 1948, they have the right to reclaim that. Now, what's more interesting, in the famous family is Muhammad al-Qudus family, who lives in Sheikh Jarrah. Well, ask him where his grandmother's from. Okay, his grandmother was from Jaffa. No, yeah, but maybe it was Jaffa. So basically, she's living in a house because she was ethnically cleansed from her house. So if you want to return the homes that belonged to Jews in 1948, I'm down for that. I'm 100% for that. But I need to add a contingent. Return the homes that were taken. My great-grandmother's home was in Lifta. My other great-grandmother's home was in Ain Kadam. You want to return my houses in Lifta and Ain Kadam? I will gladly say, here's Sheikh Jarrah, take it tomorrow morning. But you see, you don't want to apply equality. You just want justice for Jews and nobody else. And this is the hypocrisy that these Zionists throw at us day in and day out. They want equality. They want this, but just for them. And your system has failed to provide justice for Palestinians. And it's because you guys don't care. And this is Jewish supremacy called Zionism. And this is, Rachel, I'm sorry. I know you're trying to put a nice picture on Zionism, but this is a Zionism that we see.
Yeah, I
From
think
their perspective, yeah.
As the one Jewish Palestinian on this panel, I think it's important for us to recognize each other's different versions of Zionism and how, for Jews, Zionism really is this movement for us to be able to be secure in our ancestral homeland. But for Palestinians, in practice, Zionism has been their oppression, disposition, land theft, and death, right? Consistently for 100 years now. So it's, as long as the conflict is ongoing and in the name of Zionism, there's still massive human rights abuses, it's going to be very hard for Palestinians to recognize what our version of Zionism is, because they're experiencing a form of Zionism that's very oppressive for them. So I think it's important for us to understand each other's version of Zionism, but I don't think we can do that while there's still ongoing human rights abuses in the name of the Jewish state.
So something I'm seeing, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, Danny asked, I think he asked the question, Danny, I think it's Danny Ershad. Is this Danny Ershad that's asking the question? He said, can you imagine Zionism disappear today? What future will emerge from that what would you name the land? Would you consider a one state named Israel Palestine? And I think I'll go first, Nizar, if you don't mind, or Shane, is that I liked yesterday's speaker, May. I keep forgetting her last name. May said something. She said, I'm at the point right now, I don't care what you call it. You can call it falafel land, as far as I'm concerned. I just want to be equal, and I want freedom. I'm not concerned about it being calling Palestine or Israel or falafel or hummus stand or whatever you want to call it. As long as it gives equality to people and our Palestinian people the right to live on their land, just free as anybody else who can come and live free, I'm down. I'm cool.
Yeah, seeing a few comments on in the chat, which is that a solution or something that Palestinians would be ready to accept would necessarily mean that the Israelis need to leave or that Israel would cease to exist. And I just want to say that I definitely don't feel that way, and I don't think that I really don't want that to be the feeling in the room. That doesn't seem reasonable to me at all. And I think there's definitely solutions out there where everyone's human rights can be expected. Like, I don't want another Nakba of Israelis to happen. That doesn't seem like a good thing to me at all. Just really wanted to put that out there for you guys.
But also, Shane, be empathize with the fact that there are those Palestinians that want to get rid of the Israelis because they feel like they cannot imagine being able to live with the Israelis, right? So yeah, there are Palestinians that are calling to get rid of the Israelis because of what they've suffered. You and I think, no, it is possible to have a way to live with the Israelis with some sort of arrangement where we are all equal. Just as much as there are many Israelis that think they cannot live with the Palestinians because Palestinians are terrorists and they hate us because we are Jews, right? Which is completely incorrect, right? So, but that's how they see it. And that, in my opinion, is their problem. They're if they don't want to see the facts for what they are.
Yeah. And there's shitty perceptions all around.
Yeah, saying that they are attacking us because of incitement. You don't need to get incited when you get slapped at the checkpoint. That's enough of an incitement. No amount of literature is gonna make you blow yourself up. Compared to having your father tortured to death, or so, but it's an inconvenient truth. I do not want to see the connection between Israel's the way Zionists are making Israel survive is literally through the oppression of Palestinians. Like, they didn't actually ask Palestinians to take this land; they confiscated the land, right? So for an Israeli, they are living facts of settlements being there, of a certain system of democracy, completely oblivious to what's underneath that. Just like white Americans have absolutely no clue how much of what they take for granted is literally built on people of color getting less rights and being oppressed. So the nice neighborhood that you have is because Black people are denied entry into that land or denied access or ability to buy in that area, and so on and so forth. Somebody who's in privilege, just like men and women, so many men that are misogynist, they do not actually see what's wrong with women. Like, why you have a house, you have the house is your empire. Why do you want more rights? You have plenty of rights, right? I'm not. They would say I'm not a misogynist. I have a daughter and I have a wife. If I hated women, I wouldn't have them, right? They don't see that they are living a privilege, that they have access to things that women don't have access to because they are women, right? That's the thing. And we are not able to access basic rights because we are not Jewish. Had we been Jewish, we would have access to those things. Now, Zionists would argue, yes, in a Jewish state, that's how it's supposed to be. Great. The problem with this Jewish state is that it was built on actual people that were not Jewish and definitely not Zionist, right? And these people still exist, whether they are in the West Bank, in the Gaza Strip, and citizens of Israel, or they are refugees. The fact that a fourth or fifth generation Palestinian refugee wants to go back and does not want to be naturalized in Jordan or in Lebanon sucks for Zionism, but it is a right, right? You can't ask Palestinian refugees to just waive the right to return because, Israel accepted Iraqi Jews and Yemeni Jews. Well, those Iraqi Jews and Yemeni Jews, when they got kicked out of Yemen and Iraq, they chose to come to Israel. They didn't choose to go to back to Iraq. Right? That's the whole point. The whole point is self-determination, that nobody else decides what happens to you, right? But somehow, as you said, like the principle only applies to Jews. When it comes to Palestinians, it doesn't apply, right? Water rights goes to Jews, but the same water right does not come to Palestinians, and so on and so forth. It's that long as they are convinced, or all of the Israelis and Zionists that believe that they have sovereignty and full rights from the river to the sea, then, you're not going to get anywhere.
I see we have, I'm not going to mention anybody by name, but I see we have at least one other Palestinian, maybe two here who's viewing. So if you want to hop on, feel free to raise your hand and we'll bring you on.
I'm going to hop off slowly because I have another appointment. I'm very sorry. This has been very interesting. I've enjoyed it very much. And thank you very much to the audience for listening and to the panelists.
Nice to meet you, Shane. It was actually my first time. I know I've seen you around the server, but I didn't know who you were. But it was nice to meet you.
Thanks,
Happy
Shane.
to connect again.
Yeah.
Let's connect. Let's connect privately, okay? Nizar and Justin.
Sure.
All right. Masalam, everyone. Bye bye.
Salam.
I saw someone requested to speak, but then the request went away. So whoever that was, please raise your hand again and we'll bring you on. Galan, bringing you on.
Galan
Yeah.
Lapan, I think, and Allah is here as well. I don't know if she can.
Galan,
Let's hear a lady's perspective, a Palestinian lady's perspective. Yallah, Allah, come on.
Galan, we're inviting you on. Donnie, we're not going to bring you on now just because we're doing a Palestinian thing. Every time I share, it's really I'm speaking out of place. Last week we did an Israeli panel, but we'll probably do another Israeli one next week, Danny, so I'd love to have you on.
So I accepted Justin's request for hearing a Palestinian woman perspective. So, hey guys,
Nice to hear you.
happy to be watching this.
You want to introduce
yeah.
yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll give Galan the floor.
Yeah, so my name is Allah. I'm the community manager here. I am 23. I live in East Jerusalem. And I don't think I have much to add. I think most people know who I am already. But yeah, I'm from East Jerusalem. But I can't go to Jerusalem. I've been separated from the city because of the wall. So now I hold a West Bank ID. And I would say like living in the West Bank isn't really the easiest thing. It's very hard. It's always been hard. And after the 7th of October, it only got worse. And I only try my best to preserve my hope through doing things like this. And yeah, that's pretty much about me.
Thank you, Allah. Galan, welcome.
Hello. My name is Romeo. I'm 21 years old. I'm from Nazareth. So I have an Israeli passport, basically. I'm from the 48 Arabs. And do you want me now to just say, like, to identify myself?
Yeah, feel free to share whatever you'd like. The floor is yours.
Help me out. What specific topic is it? Like, there's a million things.
So I could ask you a question. So you're from Nazareth, which is Israel proper. Do you identify as Palestinian? Do you also identify as Israeli?
No, I identify as Palestinian.
Palestinian, okay. Do you have do you have Israeli friends that you see sometimes?
Yes.
You do.
I do.
So maybe just share a little bit about what it is being like a man from Nazareth.
Like if I want to talk about my city, it's very bad in the terms of our mayor has been like stealing the budget of the city for a few years. So now we have trash everywhere. Nazareth has never seen worse circumstances. Also, we have like the mob families, the like criminal families. You know, they have all the authority. They work with the police. The police help them. There are corrupt officers, and they basically take ransom. I think it's called in English. In Arabic, it's khawa, which is basically just like going around for the businesses in the city and asking for money. Yeah. Not like
extortion.
Extortion.
You're like bribing them from themselves. They're like tell you that if you pay us money and we protect you, but we're protecting you from ourselves. You don't pay, we shoot up the place, we kill your son or whatever, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So it's all connected to the very corrupt and vile government we have, because it's under their control to solve this, but maybe they're accomplices, or maybe it's just to their benefit, or maybe they just don't give a shit. But yeah, they're just like basically allowing us to kill each other. We have like in Arab cities inside of Israeli borders, we have like I think the death toll is 180 deaths of like murder, and the suspects or the people that have been caught are very few. I don't want to say wrong statistics, so I'm not going to say statistics, but it's extremely low. You can probably look it up. So yeah, it is connected. They're basically allowing us to kill each other, maybe even supplying the weapons, or like totally supplying the weapons. Their military grade weapons are being used in the streets. So yeah, it's pretty chaotic. It's fucked up, but nothing compared to what our brothers and sisters are going through in Gaza, or even the West Bank and Jenin and all that stuff.
So wouldn't you say that a lot of these crime problems are because the Israel police force and things like that are not paying attention enough to the 20% of the population, that they're neglecting them? That a lot of this has to them there. That if you see the problem is when you go into like in the United States, if you go into a lot of like communities that are poor, underrepresented, like the Black community, that you have these power vacuums, and who fills these power vacuums are, and you know, and we see it even in the West Bank, to be honest with you. We had in my city in the West Bank right now, in the West Bank side, we had a big fight the other day with the Bidu, and the Bidu came and they beat the crap out of somebody and did stuff and stuff. And when the Palestinian Authority came, the Bedouin, who do they run? They run behind the army. They hide behind the army, and these Bedouins are actually, some of them are actually from the 48 territories, and they come there to bring in drugs and stuff. So these power vacuums are part of the project of occupation, because when cities and these municipalities and stuff don't have a structured central government or something controlling them, you have a power vacuum, and those power vacuums are usually filled by criminal elements. And I think that's what you're seeing in the 48 territories.
Yeah, exactly. And there's like this stereotype that Jews and Christians are like hand in hand, even like the right-wing Zionists and Christians are hand in hand, but it's all bullshit. It's not really true. It's just a front to like separate and conquer, I think. I think like the really right-wing people in the government, they don't separate us. They act like they do so we fight each other, or like get jealous of each other, or like the Christians think they're privileged. They have a higher rate of joining the army, but it's all a front, and we can see it in Nazareth, the city of Jesus Christ. It's fully dominated by criminal families and by a corrupt government that has stayed for 3 years. They just recently removed the mayor. I don't think he even got criminal charges. He just like stepped aside, and now a Jewish guy is gonna be the mayor of Nazareth for the first time, I think, in history. But maybe that was the plan all along, you know. In like these minor problems that we're facing, like inside Israeli borders, are like part of the bigger picture, even though they're like you just missed them out, maybe. And many people are not even educated about them, because all of the eyes are on Gaza or on the Iranian war, bigger issues. And yeah, they are bigger issues, especially what's happening in Gaza, but it's all connected, actually. And like we're so separated behind a wall or behind imaginary borders, that we can't really get to know each other's problems fully. Like all of us have fragments of the whole issue, but the issue is so big, and it's.
So let me ask you, Galan, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ayman Oda is a Palestinian who's in the Knesset right now.
Yeah, God
he's an
bless him.
outspoken person. He's a great spokesperson. He's condemned the war in Gaza and Netanyahu. They've had some shouting matches and stuff. He's currently right now facing impeachment, and I find it interesting that we hear this notion that the Palestinian citizens of Israel are fully equal citizens with all the rights. Yet we have people screaming genocidal things in the Knesset. Has any impeachments ever happened to them? And why is it that this Palestinian person, who hasn't really said anything genocidal, he's never said, I want to kill the Jews or I want to drive them out and things like that.
You know the reason he's being exterminated? Like, you know the reason that triggered it?
No, please elaborate.
Oh, okay. So he mentioned it in one of the times he spoke in one of their meetings. He said that it was a tweet during the war, like 2 weeks ago, I think it happened. He tweeted something about a hostage deal. A hostage deal happened in Gaza. He tweeted, "I'm very happy for the hostage deal and the hostages that got freed. I hope for a future that both of the citizens of this country get free and liberated, the Arabs and the Jews." You know, so he's basically saying that he wants Arabs and Jews that are not right-wing, that are not Zionists, to also be liberated from this very vile minority using the name Israel and the government to just do all these horrible war crimes and stuff. And for that, he's getting exterminated. And the people that are exterminating him are the same people that order the genocide actions. So they basically have no right to do that, but technically they do. So it's fucked up.
So let me ask you, do you live in fear, like that your social media, like if you post something that could be controversial, like there was an incident in Beersheba where a 14-year-old Palestinian girl said, I feel sorry for the children of Gaza, and she got screamed at by her classmates and the parents and ended up having to leave the school? Because in Israel, we have people putting like Kahana's right, Mayor Kahana lives. And yet when it comes to these comments, it's like, I just feel like, and again, this goes back to my notion that there's such a lopsided vision of what's justice for Jews and what's justice for Palestinians, and even within the 1948 areas, because we're always portrayed that you guys are happy, you guys have full rights, you're totally equal, just like your Jewish citizens.
Yeah, so to answer your question, I do feel fear, but doesn't stop me though. I make music, and I make music about what happens. It's in Arabic. I talk about the occupation, I talk about what happens in Gaza, I talk about all that shit. And yes, I am at risk, even though in my songs I don't like say anything extremist, which is like kill the Jews or whatever. I don't say anything like that, or I don't mention names, I don't mention anything. But if the IDF took a listen at my songs, translated them, they can totally fuck my life up, yes. And I'm constantly at risk, but I still take that risk because the risk of me being silent, I think, is a bigger one. Not to mention that the guilt would beat me inside that I'm not saying anything. I feel like it's like part of my purpose, you know. I have to say something. It's like the genocide is happening a few kilometers away from my house. Like, if I'm not talking about it, why would I expect the other Arab countries to talk about it or defend us, or the United Nations or the whatever, you know? So yeah, that's my answer.
And I missed the part when you said you do identify as Palestinian or you do not. It wasn't clear what your answer was.
Your voice blurred. I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. My internet is so crappy today. I said earlier when you said I do or do not identify as Palestinian. I didn't understand what you.
Well, I said I do identify as Palestinian. I'm an Israeli that identifies as.
He doesn't identify as Israeli. He identifies as
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. It wasn't clear. I'm sorry, guys. Today my internet is like half-assed today. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, good. So we're gonna.
You should.
Yeah, go ahead.
You
Alana.
should post. Yeah. Galan, you said that you do music. I think you should post your music, like for the people to see, because your songs are amazing, and
Thank
they
you.
deserve attention.
Thank you.
So we're gonna do
And sure.
what I want to do, since
Well-
we're already going on two hours.
Just 1 second.
Yeah, go
What can
ahead.
I do that? Like, if I want to share stuff with this community, especially the Arab people, because like it's an Arabic, nothing personal.
We have maybe we could set up a channel, music under the Palestinian. Maybe we can do that.
Yeah, we could do that. There's also so Galan, we'll find a way to do that. But you're already in the Palestinian circle, and I believe you're also in another circle. So we could we'll figure out how to do that. You could also drop it here in the chat if you want to do it right now. So what we're gonna do is, I think we're gonna take maybe a final question, and then we're just gonna turn this more into a free-flowing conversation where we'll let people come on stage, and anyone can come on stage and share, and we'll have a nice, vibrant conversation. Danny asks wait, where's your question, Danny? And also, Danny, by the way, good to see you here on Discord. If Zionism disappears today, what future do you believe will emerge from that?
The question is for me.
This is for the whole panel, whoever wants to respond.
Okay.
What do you mean exactly? Okay, Galan, you can go.
Yeah, I think a start would be to give basic human rights to Palestinians, give them a state to set up new borders. At first, because of the horrible crimes that the current government made in the past 2 years, there is many traumatized children in Gaza that cannot forgive and will not forgive, sadly. I'm not saying about everyone, but some people have suffered losses that they can't recover from. So insane amounts of money should go to therapy, and when it comes to terrorist attacks or payback or revenge, because that will happen. Sadly, that's the truth. It's gonna happen, even if the Zionist government falls and two states happen. There should be, I think that's just my personal opinion, there should be public executions, and to anyone that does that, just to spread fear of anyone that's trying to take revenge or something, since now we have equal rights. Because I think it's imaginary to kick one of the two out of the country completely, but to be fully Palestinian dominated or fully Israeli dominated, that's just imaginary and fully extremist. So yeah, I think that people that try to take revenge that will get us nowhere, only closer to more torment, should be punished publicly, and that would scare the other people to act on their revengeful thoughts or extremist thoughts.
Thank you, Galan.
Thank you.
Appreciate your response. Next.
I was going to say that I think that it's not going to be something where we just click the switch off. And I've had really spiritual talks with, for example, with certain people. And, I've talked to Rav Hanan about this as well. I've always thought that Zionism could be tweaked, take the principles of hey, a Jewish identity, wanting to live in the homeland and building a society for Jewish people. I don't have a problem with that, but it's the supremacy part. And I'm coming to the conclusion that Zionism has been so tainted that I'm not sure that it can continue. I don't think that it can be reformed. At the same time, Danny, I think that there has to be a transitionary period, because especially now with what's going on in Gaza, I think that psychologically we have changed. I know I have psychologically changed, and I'm not even in Gaza, even though I have a lot of friends there. But still, I can, and I think that it's affected society. The Israelis have been also affected as well from October 7th. So I think that it's a transitionary thing that has to happen, and that we have to move into a society where Zionism, it needs to go away, because it's just been tainted. There's no such thing as a good white nationalist. I think white nationalism is just bad, because it's, there's extreme versions of it. Where you can go into Nazism or some of these Eastern European other movements or stuff, National Front in France. But in the end, I don't know if these ideologies can continue and be successful. But at the same time, we have to transition. So the main we need to do is stop these wars and killing and occupation. These are things that can be done on the ground. And I think that in a matter of a decade, things will change. And even the people of Gaza, even after what they faced, I think they will change as well, because they're going to continue to need healing, as well as the people in the West Bank. But when you see light at the end of the tunnel, Palestinian people are very forgiving. I think we will move forward. I think we will be able to work with anybody if we know that it's going to lead us to equality and justice. I saw it in the 1990s. I'm old enough to remember it. I saw society change, and I thought things were going to be good, and I think we've missed the opportunity. And I think that we can bring that back, because little bit changes and in the right direction and reality on the ground. But if we continue the way it is now, it's going to be a disaster. That's how my answer is. So eventually, other and can live to each other, because we have to live in the world together. I know that sounds idealistic, but it's the truth. It's what we need.
Thank you, Justin. Nizar, would you like to share? This is actually similar to the first question. It's interesting, but coming at it from a different angle.
I missed it, sorry.
It's if Zionism were to cease to exist, what do you think would actually happen on the land?
I have no idea.
Appreciate the honesty.
I mean, I'm not into prediction. I care less about predicting. I want an agentic push for change, like what would we like the future to be? Not like we're spectators and looking and waiting to see what happens. The point I think also Ahmed said, like, you just need to be careful with labels, like whether it is Zionism or whatever. I just realized I had turned off my camera. If there's a version of Zionism where I have my full rights, sure, bring it on. I'm more than happy. So the problem is not Zionism. The problem is the reality of what we're living. The reality is that for the last 100 years, Palestinians have had truncated rights. So obsessing about why are Palestinians using violence? No, violence is the symptom. The question is not when will Israel be saved. The question is when the Palestinians are going to have their full rights, right? And conditioning Palestinian rights on how Israelis feel about Palestinians is the essence of lack of equality. Israelis' rights of self-determination are not determined by how other people feel, right? And that's always the problem, is that what applies to Israelis somehow does not apply to others. So people get offended by a singer saying, kill the IDF, but then they're not offended by children being burned to death and parents seeing their children being burned to death or starving to death, right? So both are bad, but somehow the offense is more important and gets all the attention, and everybody criticizes it, but then nobody says anything about what's happening to children starving to death in Gaza. So that inequality is the problem, is that our lives actually do not matter. And there is this demand, because of the Holocaust, somehow we need to treat Jews, give them exceptional treatment. We can criticize everybody else, but we cannot criticize Israel because of the Holocaust. Yes, the Holocaust was a horrible thing, but that does not give you extra rights. And I know it sucks. And I know it's a place where a Jew does not feel safe. Yes, and that's part of what sucks in the world. A lot of people do not feel safe. The Armenians do not feel safe. The Rohingya do not feel safe. Yes, it sucks, but you're not going to be safer. But definitely, you're not going to be safer by oppressing other people, right? Israelis and Jews are not going to have a better life at the expense of others. The right of self-determination stops at my right of self-determination, as Charles de Gaulle said. Your right to move your hand stops at my nose. And somehow there has been so much indoctrination in the Zionist in circles that somehow what happened to Jews is so unacceptable, so horrendous, that somehow Jews are entitled to more room for maneuver, more acceptance of mistakes, and more benefit of the doubt more than others. And that's inherently racist and discriminatory.
The other issue is that, and this created a big problem yesterday with me and a person who I've been with in regards to the Intifada. Like when I said that Zionism has been tainted, he said, well, what about the Intifada? And I just want to respond to this, is that did things happen in the Intifada that were bad, like the suicide bombings and stuff? Yes, but was that the Intifada? It wasn't. And I think that, if you look at the Intifada, for me, I don't want an Intifada, to be honest with you. I wish we don't need an Intifada. But guess what the solution is? And the occupation. No Intifada. It's like chemotherapy is an awful thing. It's terrible. It makes you feel bad. You lose your hair and it makes and all this other stuff. You lose your appetite. But if you don't have cancer, then you don't need chemotherapy. So if we want to get rid of the Intifada, then end the occupation. You cannot occupy a people and oppress them militarily and then tell these people Intifada is anti-Semitism, or Intifada is violence, or Intifada is this is crazy, And now we live in a society where saying "Free Palestine" or Muhammad Asaf's song "Demmi ana Demmi Falastini" is now considered anti-Semitism. This is madness.
Thank you, Justin. And I think with that, or Alaa, did you want to chime in? And then we'll start bringing people on stage and open it up. And then anyone on the panel who needs to run, we'll let you go. But of course, everyone's welcome to stay.
Yeah, I think everyone summed up like what I was thinking about. The thing is, like with violence, it's a reaction to what's happening. That's the issue. And like people do not seem to focus on that these things do not happen just because people feel like doing that, just because they want to oppress, just because they want to kill. No, it's not. They don't do that because they are aggressive in nature. It's a reaction for the oppression that they're struggling with. And I think the first step for this is transitional justice and implementation of international law and the end of the occupation. I think the first step for everything is to end the occupation and also like work on people mindsets and also compensate them for all the loss that they've went through. That's the first step. But obviously, like this is a very hard question because it's not very relevant. People do not really think about the vision of the future because they're caught up with what's going on right now, and it's a very hard reality, and it only seems to be getting worse and worse, and that's the issue. Yeah, that's what I have.
Thank you, Alaa. Appreciate you all, Nizar, Alaa, Justin, Galan, Shane. This was amazing. We're now going to start bringing people on. Naturally, the temperature of the room may raise a little bit, but we're not going to engage in personal attacks. If there are personal attacks, I will need to remove people from the stage. This goes for everybody. Anywho.
Thanks.
With that,
thank you guys.
Thanks, Alaa. We're going to bring Altoids on. Also, I do see like Rocksteady. I want to just address you real quick because I think you're creating unnecessary hostility in chat, and I understand tensions are high and all that, but I think we often have this tendency to interpret what somebody says in the worst way possible if we see them as an ideological opponent. So you accuse Nizar of threatening you, but he in no way, shape, or form threatened you. He simply said if you go to a Palestinian neighborhood and you have this like arrogance and condescending behavior, then you won't be safe. That's not a threat. He's just describing reality for what it is. So I would say, there's a very diverse crew here, many different opinions. Try to be a little bit more charitable in how you interpret what people are saying. Danny, what's up, man?
Hello.
Actually, sorry, Danny. Altoids was here first. We're going to give it to Altoids, and then we'll give it to you, and then Omar.
So I actually have a question for both Nisar and Galan Laban, which if Laban is his real last name or whatever, it's interesting. But both of you, So my question is, I asked in the chat, but I think it was too controversial to bring it up initially, so I'm going to bring it up myself. The question is, I hear a lot of people, especially outside of I think it was initially brought up outside of the Palestinian world. You may correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it's that relevant, but the word 1948 Arab Palestinian, calling the people who hold Israeli citizenship, Arabs who hold Israeli citizenship, 1948 Palestinians, isn't that a form of trying to separate the loyalty of the people who live within Israel away from Israel and put it on the wider Palestinian or Arab population in the region, and making them in a form of a fifth column, which, as you know, if I don't know if I have to explain what a fifth column is, but it can endanger it can put the Israeli Arab population as a fifth column, which in turn will put them as part of the conflict more directly.
Can I answer this? Because this affects, listen, especially if you live in Jerusalem and you have to deal a lot with the West Bank and stuff.
Well, I really wanted to ask the Israeli Arab here more specifically. You can answer after.
I'll let him answer, but the problem is that the term was never meant to like be derogatory toward them. It's just that you have to understand we live in different realities. Like the Fawi, we say the Fawi for someone who's in the West Bank. We say Ghazawi for one who's in the West Bank. It's because we live in different realities, and it's a way to explain a person's situation. So we say الداخل واحد من الداخل or Arab 48. This is referring to people because of their situation, the reality that they live in. And it's important because it affects where you can travel to, when you can travel, how you can travel, who you can get married to. Because like in my situation, I have a wife who's from the West Bank. She's not allowed to come to my house. My children do not come to my house because I have to go get them tasariq. So this is why these terminologies are used, not because we're saying that this person's a different or classifications and things like that.
Okay, but I think the question is more directed to is the people who live in Israel who have Israeli citizenship loyal to Israel or not?
I will answer you, but Justin's answer was very valid. Okay, the question was: is the term 48 Arabs can be used to like separate us or make us think that we're like not loyal to the other side, or like we're separate from them, even though like if we go back before the occupation, we were living hand in hand, breathing together and marrying each other and all that? Is it like that's the question?
Well, maybe the question wasn't understood. Let me say it again.
Rephrase it, yeah.
So, if the people, I've seen, I don't know about how you call in Arabic because I don't speak Arabic, but I've seen in the international English-speaking world when they speak about Israeli Arabs, Palestinians who hold Israeli citizenship, or just Arabs in general, they are called 1948 Arab Palestinians. So in the context that I've seen it being used, is usually them telling them, you're Arab, you're not Israeli. Then what you should care about your loyalty or your nationality. So that's part to make you, that it's like they want you to be a fifth column, which, let me explain real quick what fifth column is, just in case people understand. Fifth column is a population that's with a country that has citizenship and all that stuff, that actively participate in undermining that state in a conflict. So it feels like they want you to be that when they say this term in English, at least. I don't know how Justin came in and said the Arabic version that makes more sense.
The same term. We've translated the term to Tabur Khamis. So this comes from Napoleon. I can't remember, he was fighting the Prussians or the Russians or something, and his general was saying like, how do you expect to fight them when they have 4 columns? And he says, I have a fifth column, as in I have spies and people from the enemy's side that are working for me, right? So that's the fifth column, that's where it comes from. But just as historical background, one, the Balfour Declaration specifically says that the British Crown sees favorably the creation of a nation state for the Jews while respecting the religious and civil rights of non-Jews. So right from the beginning, there is a recognition of national rights for Jews and lack of recognition of the national rights of everybody else, right? And that carried on into Israel. So in the Israeli identity cards, you have, it says Jewish, Druze, Muslim, Christian, right? It was intentional not to put Arab, because if the Israeli state recognized Arab as a nationality, right, it would recognize the Palestinians that are our nation. So that was an intentional distinction. You add to that the Druze actually do serve in the Israeli army, and the Christians and the Muslims or Bedouins can apply to work or join the army. So for many Palestinians, it was important to distinguish that when they are called Arab Israelis by others, it does make them like a fifth column and puts them in danger. But more importantly is that they do not define themselves as Arab Israelis. They do not want to define themselves as members of the country that oppresses them. So that's why they say Palestinians with Israeli citizenship. That is, they have Israeli citizenship because Israel landed on them. They happened to be in the land when Israel was created, and they were given Israeli passports in 1966, right? But that's a definition by the state that occupied them, and they want to say that, no, we are Palestinian citizens of Israel. That is, our ethnicity or our nationhood is Palestinian, and our citizenship and therefore our civic rights are Israeli. Now, yes, that's caused a lot of issues for Palestinian representation. So the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, in theory represents all Palestinians, and it is the legal entity that is recognized internationally as representing all Palestinians. So when Oslo happened and there was a recognition or the acceptance of resolving the Palestinian-Israeli conflict through the two-state solution, the question of whether the Palestinian citizens of Israel were represented by the PLO or by Israel, the PLO was silent about it, but we know for a fact that the PLO decided not to represent Palestinian citizens of Israel, and that was an understanding between Israel and the PLO. But that was never said explicitly. The PLO theoretically still represents Palestinian citizens of Israel. Having said that, the last time there were elections in the PLO was in the 80s. So the PLO itself is not representative. But yes, the definition of who's Palestinian, who's Israeli is a complex one, and not how you label it is often not innocent. Right? So often people either label it one way or the other because they have trying to make a political point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, based on what you said,
Altoids.
if a person goes to war,
Altoid, we're in 2 hours, so maybe get some other questions because some of us have to
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. We
I
just
know
have
Rachel and Danny.
Justin. Let me
Yes,
facilitate
so this is
just to keep it
Danny,
organized.
And I want to say hi to Adar. And
Wait, can you guys hear me?
Hi to Justin. I think Justin.
Danny, can you hear me?
Communicated in the past. So I want to repeat.
Can you guys hear me?
Hold on, Danny. Adar is speaking. Can you hear him? Because he's speaking.
Wait, Danny, can you hear me now?
No, I can't hear Adar.
No. And Justin, were you able to hear me as well? Okay.
I'm hearing you. Can you maybe disconnect and connect again, Adar? Because they're saying they can't hear you, and I hear you fine. So my shitty internet hears you, but they don't.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
Testing 1 2 3.
Okay, all good. I just want to say, Altoids, just we don't want to cut you short, but because we have so many people here, we can't.
Adar, we cannot hear you.
We don't have time for follow-ups. Okay.
Adar, they're not hearing you.
No, I think everyone could hear me but Danny. So Justin, you could just let him know that. Tell him I could hear him.
What is he trying to say?
نزار انت سامع أدار ولا مش سامع؟
لا.
He can't hear you.
Yeah,
I can hear him too. I can hear Adar.
Can you hear me now?
Now,
yes.
2025. This is like one of the world's leading platforms and such basic fucking technical difficulties. Goddamn. Anyways, on our own platform on Head On, we commit that we will not have these problems. Anyways, so Altoids, did you hear what I said to you? Altoids, I just said thank you, and unfortunately we just don't have time for the back and forth because we have a lot of people here. So Danny, I'm glad you could hear me now. The floor is yours.
Yes. Okay, hi Adar, good to be here, and hi for Justin. I think we communicated. I want to repeat my question and explain it real quick. So my question is, can you imagine Zionism disappears today? What future will emerge from that? And the point behind the question is that I personally believe that there need to be some sort of people or a group or a force out there that puts out an hypothetical future idea of what is the end goal, which I believe is Jewish communities, Muslim communities, Christian communities all living together on the land from the river to the sea. And if Palestinians just keeps calling themselves Palestinians and Israelis just keep calling themselves Israelis, that's not helping. I think we need to put a vision out there of how can both cultures be somehow integrated and create some kind of an umbrella where Jewish communities can live as Jews, Palestinians can live as Palestinians, but we're together some sort of a unified Israeli Palestinian. So maybe the question is, can you Palestinians call yourselves Israeli Palestinians the way Adar is calling himself?
Yeah, so that is something that's been discussed often. So one thing to make clear is that because Palestinians are under occupation, this is not on their radar, right? They're focused on what's on the here and now. Now, the exception are people like Suleiman Khatib and others who, despite the fact that they have family members who were killed and tortured and what have you, they still feel like there is a way to have a coexisting future. But these are the minorities. We need to accept that both the Palestinians and Israelis are populations that are going through trauma. It's not PTSD. It's now SD, right? So we cannot expect them to be able to think of those things when they're scared for their own lives. So when I speak with my cousins, right? Yeah, they don't want to see any Israelis. So part of why a two-state solution is popular is because Palestinians have been so aggressed by the Israelis, they literally do not want to see Israelis. So the one-state solution is not appealing to them because they do not want to be in the same army with Israelis, they do not want to have the same flag, and so on. So the need for a complete Palestinian expression is important to them, right? Maybe at a later stage, but there are others, especially those that don't live there, by the way, are one-staters because it doesn't cost them anything. If this one state happens in like 300, 400 years, their children can go to school, they can have a life, right? They can wait, right? While the Palestinians in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip cannot wait, and we're seeing the results. So what said, Justin is right, is that Palestinians accepted the two states because they are the ones who are paying the price. They are the ones who are doing most of the dying. Ideally, yes, to have a state where a system where every person's right is respected would be great, but that needs to be created through conversation. So some argue that we need to have the two states first, and then those two states as equals start discussing how do we create this a confederation or whatever system afterwards. You might think that you believe that Palestinians are equal to you, but for Palestinians, when they interact with you, they do not see as equal. They see that you still have more power than them, and therefore they don't see how they can have a fair conversation with you. Now, I think that's ill-advised from a Palestinian perspective. So that's my criticism of BDS, is that it only stops at boycotting Israel, but not what it is for, and that's incomplete. And that's a conversation that we as Palestinians are still having. I know, like my sister is working with Israeli Jewish academics on what would, sorry, my cat is, hair is everywhere. What would a constitution that includes Palestinians and Israelis look like? And that needs internal conversations, but we also need to get both our peoples in the mindset of, you call it Palestine, you call it Israel, you call it Israelian or Falafilistan, really is not relevant. What's relevant is what is the actual result in the end, right? But that's what I teach negotiations, and often what happens, people confuse the position with the actual interest. Like, I want a Palestinian state, right? That's what I demand, that's my position. But why do I want it? I want it to be able to exercise my full right of self-determination. What I really want is to exercise my full right of self-determination, and I think that a fully sovereign Palestinian state is going to achieve that. So I collapse the two. What would achieve a productive conversation is to not get stuck on the position, right? And discuss the interests. So Israelis want to be able to live as Jews, not feeling afraid, wearing the kippah, and being able to respect the Sabbath and what have you, right? Do all of these things and not fear that somebody's gonna kill them just because they happen to be Jewish, right? That is what they want. How they achieve that is a different thing, right? But having said that, after 100 years of fighting, that's not an easy. It takes some massaging to get people to discuss that.
Could I just add, like, I have U.S. citizenship now, and I can say that I'm American. And I don't have a problem saying that I'm American because it doesn't tie me to any religious identity. It doesn't tie me to any ethnic identity, things like that. And I think, Danny, to answer your question, is that if that was the identity, I don't really have a problem being Israeli. And in fact, I told Adar, I wanted my profile changed to Israeli because if I'm going to live in a country that's ruled by a government, I want that identity as a national identity. If Israel was a national identity, then I would say, okay. So in the future, if being an Israeli is not, loyalty to a certain ethnic group, a certain religion, a certain ideology and things like that, but of its citizens, of the people, but just as a national identity of where you live, this is something that's very possible. And I don't think many Palestinians that live on the land, it's not going to be an issue for them as long as it's a state that represents them. That saying that I'm Israeli doesn't mean that I'm collaborating with Zionism, doesn't mean that I'm collaborating with the Jewish takeover of Palestinian lands and denying Palestinians right to that land. So the name is not the problem. The problem is the psychological mentality and ideology part of it.
I think what I'm trying to say, and I'm sorry for taking just another sentence here, the solution I see is true and deep and profound evolution of both people into a new identity. It's not just the name. My entire set of holidays, my entire set of definition of who I am, what does it mean? Those things need to transform. We cannot continue thinking that if I will just get rid of Zionism, the land will be free. You need to form a new type of who you are. What kind of dances do you dance? What kind of songs do you sing? The whole concept of what does it mean to be an Israeli Palestinian need to transform. And I think that it's missing from the entire spectrum of conversations.
Like South Africa or Belgium, right? Oh, actually, this is a good example. So Belgium, the Flemish and the French speaking hate each other, right? But the state is providing sufficient, first it's stable, there's safety and there's economic prosperity, right? But the state provides sufficient space for cultural and national expression that they don't feel that they need a Flemish state and a French state, right? They have a different history than we do.
They have also clear borders. Israel-Palestine does not have clear borders. It's mixed up. The whole thing is mixed up.
True, but some argue that you can redraw the borders also, right? So you can, that's the argument for the confederation. That is because there are people who are religious that is more important for them to respect the Sabbath, and for, you know, Muslim and Christian conservatives, it's more important to them that people, wear modestly, right? That these people have more in common than the seculars who want to be able to, have nudist beaches, right? So that is necessarily has to be a conversation between communities where what is more important to you, right? Just like here in the US, people move from California to Texas to somewhere else because it's more a system that, Rachel agrees with me, a system that has more of the value system that you agree with, right? So it's not surprising that Islamic party in the Israeli Palestinian citizens of Israel that are part of the conservative Islamic party actually agree a lot with Shas on a lot of things, right? So I think that's what needs to happen, which is each person feels that their interests and their concerns are expressed, and then we come up with a system, I agree with you, that has enough of the whatever is common, right? So that each of us has sufficient level of their rights respected and protected to feel that, okay, I can live in this place, right? In ways that, for example, Jews are unable to live in Iraq now because of all the history that has happened. But I agree with you, it is an evolution. And for evolution, you need leaders, which is something that is absent in both our peoples. Don't have leadership.
Thank
With
you.
with vision.
Yeah.
Danny,
Have people in authority, but not leaders.
thank you so much, Danny. You're welcome to stick around, but we're going to give it over to Omar now. I think the order is Omar, Rachel, and then Noam, I believe.
Exactly.
But can you speed it up a little bit? And Nizar, خفف شوية على الجواب, okay? Because I want to hear this, but I do need to go, but I do want to hear.
You want to hear everybody else? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
let's
this will be more of a speed round question, 1 minute apiece,
speed
and
round.
then
There you
next. Cool. Omar, what's up,
I'm gonna
brother?
be real quick because I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to thank the Palestinians, you, Nazar, Justin, Romeo, and Allah, even though they're not here anymore, for continuously sharing us this perspective. And I really love when you join Nazar. Like, I feel like you're approaching this conflict from a totally educated perspective. And I'm wondering if you've heard of Jamal al-Tahat at Dawn, Democracy of the Arab World Now. It's okay. The reason I'm asking for this is that it's interesting to always hear, again, your educated perspective about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the Palestinian history. But I'm wondering if you'd also be interested in expanding this into the whole Arab region and the question of democracy and the question of history and politics as well, and political regimes in the Arab region as a whole. Also a little bit, like, I'm Egyptian, so I'd be interested also to hear your thoughts on Egypt. So I'm actually organizing an event soon, and I wanted to see if you'd be interested in attending this event and speaking at it, and maybe acting as a voice there.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll just ping you after this ends, and
Or on
we can
LinkedIn.
speak about it if you don't mind. Okay.
If you could do it on LinkedIn, it's easier for me because I'm intimidated by Discord.
I actually think you should do it
Okay,
on Discord so he gets more used to it, so he sticks around and does more here.
I have you on LinkedIn already, so I can do it on both.
Awesome. Thank you, Omar. Rachel, how's it
Can
going?
you guys hear me?
Loud and clear.
Hi. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time to ask a question. This question is for Nizar. I'm sorry if you already spoke about this before I joined the call, but ever since Rafi had his talk on here, I really strongly feel like a binational confederation, like a mini EU, where there's two technically separate states that have like their own governances, but there's like a right of travel and like work and the ability to live in both countries and also gain citizenship in either country over time, feels like the most sensible, not necessarily maybe somebody's ideal, but like the most one that seems realistic to implement if we're talking about like a long-term solution to the conflict. But I was wondering if you had heard of it, like what's your opinion of it? And then what's your like opinion and the most realistic end to the conflict?
Yeah, so I mean, there is a land for all, and there is one nation, two countries, and the other. Yeah, whatever works, to be honest. But you said something, and now I forgot. You at the beginning, you said, what did you say at the start?
I said so a binational confederation that would still be, at least in its beginnings, two separate countries, because I feel like there's many people on both sides that still maintain.
So,
Rafi's plan
like
is not. Rafi's plan is a lot different than that. His federation plan has the canton model, and I think the canton has, I believe 11 or 30.
Yeah, well, it falls on a spectrum. Like,
yeah.
But it is varying degrees of sovereignty and jurisdictions. What we need to agree on is what aspects of our lives and our rights each group gets to decide, right? So while one is definitely, the EU happened thanks to 2 world wars, right? It's just literally they realized like this is not sustainable, right? So it's really important to understand that it was France and Germany, right, with so much history of hating each other, that came to a point of, sure, the Nazis had to be destroyed, yes, but ultimately what brought it all together is that they realized that most of the fights were over coal and steel, and once they've had a joint management and they prioritized, okay, we need democratic systems, we need freedom of speech, this is what we need to guarantee, more important than the national elements, then okay, that's how this happened, right? In our case, we have a different historiography, but we know how to take, like how we are it, so we know how to, what is more important to us. And a good example of that is the refugees. While Israelis, you say refugees and they, people faint, I think the refugees are the key, because what a lot of Israelis don't understand, that for the Palestinian refugees, the whole problem is that they've been denied the right to determine what happens to them, right? So when you come and tell them, well, you need to waive your right to right of return before we talk, it's like that's the only thing they have, right? So when you talk to them and start thinking of different options, the most appealing option is to be a citizen, to have the passport of a Palestinian state and have their property rights in Israel respected. So if they are from Jaffa and they had a house, the Israeli who's in the house either literally buys the house from the Palestinian or becomes a tenant that pays the rent to the Palestinian who's from Jaffa but living in Ramallah and has a Palestinian passport, and he can go visit Tel Aviv and Jaffa and so on, right? So it's decoupling the different rights from each other and understanding what is more important to people. Some people, it's really important for them to be next to religious sites. There are a lot of Israeli settlers that couldn't care less about whose sovereignty it is. They just want to be in Shiloh or be in Hebron, right? So the solution is to diversify and devolve the decision-making, so long as the premise is consent. That is, whatever we agree to is something that we author and we own, right? So I think what we can focus on is to start that process and not necessarily decide where it goes, to just decide the principles and together decide where it goes, right? Because I have a lot of issues with a lot of Palestinians who only think of their Islamic identity, and I have issues with that, right? I think, no, everybody's equal. I mean, the religion is you have all the religious rights you want, but you cannot impose your religious, your religious beliefs cannot impose on my freedoms, right? So, I mean, that's a whole different story.
I'll just say a sentence real quick to Rachel. The other thing is, Rachel, I put a website for a land for all, which is describes exactly what you were. That's another alternative. The other thing is that, in addition to what Nizar said, is that when regards to Israelis living in Palestinian cities, like I have no problem with a Jew living in our city. But the only issue that I have is that when it's done now, the reason why I would never support Jewish people buying property in my city is because if a Jew came and bought property next door to my house in the suburb of Jerusalem, it's going to bring his family as well as hundreds of Israeli soldiers that are going to say, okay, we need to set a parameter. Hey, you can't use your front door. You know, if you look at what's happening in Hebron, for example, where you have 600 Jews that live in Hebron, and then you're going to have where people have to go up the roof of their house and down the staircase. They can't use their front door. So these are the issues. So I think when we overcome these, where people can be equal and you can live in a Jewish city or a Palestinian city and not have to face these unfair situations, this is the thing that we can evolve in. And that's what creates the problem for me and creates a lot of problem for Palestinians, is that when a settlement comes, you no longer have access to your trees to go harvest the olives and things like that. With Selfit, for example, the city of Selfit lost half their orchards of olives because Ariel decided that it's too close to the parameters of their settlement.
Awesome, thank you. And with that, we're going to give it over to Noam and then Benny.
Hi, it's a bit of continuation what I wrote in the chat. If you brought up compensation and full rights and agreement and taking responsibility, for me it's problematic that it seems like it's supposed to be only one side, because, and I do go back history till before 48, nobody confiscated or stole any houses before 48. So I'm not sure who you're going to blame for that. And you also, I think, as Palestinians, together with the whole Arab League and the Arab states, you still have responsibility in things that happen in the conflict. And I don't see it very positive that you're completely dismissing all types of responsibility, as if you're completely saints and only victims. And also dismissing
this label. I'm saying that there are Jewish rights in Iraq and in Yemen that need to be restored as well. Of course, yeah. But I'm not.
And they are also connected to the conflict. Iraq and Yemen sent their armies in 48.
You're connecting what Nizar and I said to these things. We did not say anything about Jews not having rights to properties they lost in Morocco or Iraq. None of what we said counters that. So this is stuff that you always add to the mix, Noam, sometimes, I feel.
No, it's also connected to Palestine. Are you going to compensate Jews from Gaza who lost their houses?
If I was responsible for Iraqi Jews losing their property, then yes, I'm responsible.
Talking about Gaza, Gaza, yes, of course. Listen,
there
was Fadaron, Gush Etzion, Neve Yaakov, the Jewish quarter, of course, and I'm missing one.
Atarot.
And Hebron, of course. Those were the Jewish areas that were depopulated in 1948. Sure. Our point is those need to be compensated or like dealt with and resolved. And the 450 Palestinian villages also need to be resolved, right? So yes, there are Jews that have property in Jerusalem that was confiscated from them from 1948. The problem is Israel only gives those Jews the right to that property that was confiscated after 1948, and not the Palestinians who are in Qatamon and Sha'fat even, that they see their property, but yet they don't have the right to get it restored, right? So it's the question of equality.
Yeah, we lost half Beit Hanina was lost to Pisgat Ze'ev. Pisgat Ze'ev right now, it's touching Beit Hanina. So I mean, sure, no, in a perfect world, everybody gets restored their rights to the cities that they lost before this. We support that. There's nothing counter to what we're saying.
And also,
you're saying that the Palestinians are under threat, as if the Jews were never under threat.
No, that they were under threat, but the way they're going about protecting themselves is coming at the expense of others. No, everybody agrees that anti-Semitism is a huge problem and that the Jews have historically been scapegoated. Yeah, and that's a horrible thing. And that will not be resolved by Jews oppressing Palestinians. That's all what we're saying. But I agree, yeah, Jews are under threat here in the US. There is anti-Semitism that's growing, right? Because there is association of Israeli means Jewish, right? That's not something that we created. That's something that Zionism created. It equated Jewish with Israeli, right? So they see the Israeli army doing all sorts of horrors in Gaza. They see any Jew, they become anti-Semitic against the Jew. That is wrong. But the reason for that is not because, oh, somebody is just anti-Semitic because they think Jews are worse. They're associating the Jew with the Israeli behavior. That's incorrect, just as much as associating Muslims with Daesh and with Bin Laden. Now,
That's not true, buddy.
No,
That's a lot of
Hyrax, you're gonna wait your turn, and we're not going on any unhinged Islamophobic rants this time, okay? I'm happy to have you back, but you're gonna need to meet the standard.
I'll wait.
You're gonna need to meet the standard of the town square, okay? We'll get to
I'll
it.
wait my turn.
Thank you.
I think Benny was next.
Yeah, Benny's next.
Oh, okay. No, I really just wanted to say thank you to the panel, the original panel. I think it was, I hear every word, and I'm completely with everything you say. I didn't find anything that you said that was offensive or I have any sort of contention with. I really just wanted to thank you. I have to say, if it was the people in this discussion, we'd probably have peace and about by the time before we have to go to sleep tonight. But I'm a little. I feel a little despondent about the situation on the Israeli side, at least. I think the Palestinians, I'm not going to, I don't know, you don't mention it here, I guess, not to be a downer, but you have your problems on your side as well. But on the Israeli side right now, my feeling is, and I'm not talking about people here, I'm talking about people that wouldn't even set foot anywhere within a mile of this kind of discussion, that are right now running rampant on our side.
Thanks, Benny. So that wasn't a question, that was more a statement.
Yeah, that was more of a statement. I mean, if anybody wants to respond to that, it's not really a question.
Yeah, I would just add, Benny, that yes, but change has always been done by a small group, right? The main, people talk a lot, right? But when push comes to shove, the main stuck is that there are a majority on either side that do not believe that the other side is a partner in achieving what we want, right? Again, this is not exceptional. Human beings are like that. We are more pain averse than pleasure seeking, right? We survived as a human species because our line of genes are those Homo sapiens that when they saw the saber-toothed tiger, they ran away. Those that thought that the tiger was cute got eaten, right? So we have a bias towards fear and towards threat, and therefore killing and getting rid of a threat as opposed to checking if it's good or not, right? So there is always that bias. Given the traumas that both of us, both our people have survived, and I agree that the traumas are different and they cannot be compared, but they're still traumas compared to, let's say, the Swiss that do not have these traumas, right? The cantons in Switzerland are different because they're not associated with the traumas of genuinely feeling that your safety cannot be guaranteed by the other side. That needs to change. And that changes, I would argue, through people like Combatants for Peace, who have had an experience of real pain, right? And real threat to life. And yet they experienced an act of kindness from the other side, an act that challenged a perception of, oh, the villain that is the other side. These are a minority. We need to scale those so that there are enough of us that are willing to take the risk because we've experienced the other side being actually fair and seeing us as human and not seeing us as a threat. That's the problem when we dehumanize, when we see the other group as a thing, not as a human being, right? Now, again, I want us to also be compassionate, because with ourselves and with the others, is that that's actually very difficult to do. right? These are the exception, right? So we need more of those exceptions and to create ecosystems where these exceptions become more and more prevalent.
I was going to say, I also want to thank Benny, because Benny is one of the cool-headed people here who's, I have a lot to learn from you, Benny, actually, because I think that you're always the cool-headed person with, your views are always, solid and you're cool about it. And I can learn a lot from you. And just a reminder is that Benny said something that's very important, because this is a dilemma that I think Palestinians are facing. We're like, how are we going to move forward when the house is burning so bad? And it's a very hopeless situation. But then I think about the peace accord that was with Egypt. When Israel made the peace accord with Egypt, it was very unpopular. Probably like 80% of Israelis didn't want it, and still Egyptians don't want it. But I think today, most Israelis would agree that it was a good thing, because 50 years later, there's been no major war with Egypt. And most Egyptians will probably say, we agree, even though we're not happy with Israel and what they're doing to the Palestinians, but at least we don't have a war where 15 to 20,000 people are dying. So who knows? Maybe some good leader will come, because we do need leadership. The Palestinians definitely need good leadership, and the Israelis absolutely need good leadership. And it may take that. And that when people see something change, that may, it might happen like the same thing what happened with Egypt.
Inshallah.
See, that's a nice, beautiful moment between an Israeli and a Palestinian right there. That's what we're all about. Altoids, I know you're waiting, but I really do want to give an opportunity to those who have not yet had the chance to speak. So we will get to you, but we have Hyrax and Nizar. Don't worry, I server muted you so we can't hear you. We'll give it over to Hyrax, and then we'll give it to Simfo. Hyrax, what's up?
Okay,
man?
hello. Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I just caught the end of the debate now, but I wasn't okay. So you were talking about the Palestinian.
I don't think we're having a debate. We're having a discussion.
Yeah, it's more so a panel. So now it's kind of Q&A on the panel. Just to give a little context. Hyrax, last time when you hopped on, it was me just live streaming, free for all. Anyone hops on. Right. Today we're hosting a Palestinian panel, which at the end of it, we're letting people come on, ask questions, and share some thoughts. But this isn't going to turn into a full-blown argument. So I'm telling you that ahead of time. But I will tell you, Hyrax, I will tell you, as much as we disagree on things, I am going to do another one of those live streams this weekend, and you are welcome to join that one as well. Just so you know.
Well, first of all, I think that you were sort of dishonest and bad faith, and you were trying to put me down by using a lot of buzzwords, saying Hasbara, without addressing the actual.
I addressed every single point you made.
Not quite.
And anyone can watch it back, but now's not the time. Hyrax. Yeah.
Okay, let's get
the whole debate will be uploaded. People could judge for themselves, but this isn't about us.
The problem is you kind of sound borderline.
Can you ask the panel a question?
Right. Okay, so I just heard a point saying. What is the? I didn't hear the debate, but the Palestinian panel.
Maybe
I just heard the last.
Wait, Justin, let him ask.
Hold on. Can you let me finish? You said one thing about the Palestinian refugees needing to be compensated. I don't believe they should be compensated. First of all, they are not refugees. They are people that fled in a war that happened in the 1940s. Of the millions and millions of Germans that were expelled after the Second World War going to be compensated? Are you aware that 11 million Germans from places like the Sudetenland, from Poland, from the Baltic states were expelled? And today, that's probably, if you talk about people with one great-grandparent, we're talking about 30% of Germany. Are all those people going to get compensation? Are they going to get their homes back? Absolutely not. Other examples are the Greco-Turkish population exchange after the Lausanne Agreement of 1923. None of them left out of their own volition. They left because they were forced to by their governments. None of them got any compensation, and they are, much more traumatic. The Armenians in Western Armenia, today Eastern Turkey, none of them sadly got any compensation. But the difference between, the Palestinians need to accept the responsibility. My question is, for the Palestinians, do you accept that fundamentally you initiated your own demise in the land of Israel because you decided to reject the UN partition plan and launch a war of extermination against the Jewish people in the land of Israel? Because under Hajj Amin al-Husseini, under Kawakaji.
All right, Hyrax, we got your question. You asked the question. We'll let them respond.
Yeah, that's my question.
Thank you. Thank you.
How about this?
Let me clarify.
Dude, you made your point very clear. Let me just answer.
Two fundamental points.
So forget compensation. Forget compensation. How about the right of return? Just like a Jew who has a grandparent can return.
Germans have the right
of
return?
If I have okay, sure.
Do the Germans
Why
have the
not?
right of return?
I mean, we're not going to do this. I muted Hyrax.
I would just say let's go to the next question. I think the next question is better.
No. Let's respond. Let's respond.
The
Yeah.
Germans accepted it. You're expecting us. You're requiring us to behave the way others did. The whole point of self-determination is that we decide what happens to us. If an idiot Palestinian left because he wanted to have a vacation in Lebanon, and then when he came back, the Israelis not let him in, right? He chose to come back. If he chooses that he still wants to come back to his village in Palestine or Israel and not go back to Beirut, that's his choice. That's the whole fucking point. The same way that the Yemenis and the Qataris, the Iraqi Jews, when they got kicked out of Iraq, they chose to come to Israel. Some of them went to Britain, right? So Avishlam went to Britain, didn't go to Israel, right? That's the choice. We are not required to choose like the Germans or the Armenians or the Turks or the Greeks. That's our problem, is that you continue to not see us as human. You see us as a problem, and you're frustrated that we're not behaving in the way that's convenient to you. That's what you need to start realizing. It's not our problem that history did whatever. When the partition happened, it was the partition through colonialism. We never voted the British here. We never voted for the UN. It wasn't their land to begin with, to decide to partition to begin with. And even then, the Jewish population of Palestine in 1947 was 30%, half of whom were actually immigrants. How come they get 54% of the land? Learn the facts before you come spew idiocy.
And this whole war of extermination. I mean, there was 1948 when the first Arab armies even entered the land of Palestine. Already 2/3 of the refugees had already been made. So I can't revise his history. That's why I just.
Man. I tell you, I add you something else. Jabotinsky, right? Not Jabotinsky. Begin. Back in the 40s, right? He was arguing that they need to target British civilian targets so that the Brits react disproportionately, and that would bring empathy to the Jews and the Zionists. So check your history first to understand what's happening now.
I would actually go on to say that Palestinians being stubborn in their right of return makes them more like Jews than we care to admit. We returned after 2,000 years. We fought to return, and we successfully returned. So out of all the people in the history of the world who can't complain about another population wanting to return, it's us, because we are the world leaders in returning successfully. Palestinians should have that right as well, and it just shows that we're more alike than we are different. Anyways, Simpo, the floor is yours.
Hey, so this is kind of following up on the last question that was asked in the panel. I think everybody was pretty much in line in something along the lines of a one-state solution with equal rights. Different ways of phrasing it, but that's kind of everyone's position on the issue. And my question on that is the same as the question last time. How do you reconcile that with the lack of will on both sides for the solution? The fact that it is the least popular one.
I would say that I'll go first, Nazar, if you don't mind. I would say that I agree with what Nazar said, that I don't think it's going to be like a light switch. You just click it and bam, everybody's one state, one citizen, and we're all this. I think that it has to be something that takes the form of a stage. I think the important thing is, number one, stop the war, end the occupation, rein in these settler terrorists that are running around creating havoc. Start with that, and then maybe work toward integrating more economic and sort of like infrastructure cooperation, and then move into where people can start living. Like if I want to come live in where you live in Ramallah, you can go live in Ramallah. Of course, by choice, okay? And slowly, this type of things. I think it's something that has to be done over time. Call it a confederation, call it a one state, call it a federation, call it whatever you want. It's something that has to be implemented over time, but there are certain things that have to happen like right now. And that's the wars and the occupation and the military and the Zionist supremacy, Jewish supremacy on the land. These are things that we have to address immediately.
Okay. So like this kind of speaks to my issue in that I feel like setting a one-state solution as a proximate goal is very much cart before the horse thinking, because the logistics that you're describing, for them to be feasible, you need to be starting from a position of two states, which can then get closer and closer and network. But like you'd have to start from a position of two states before that happens.
That's we're all arguing.
One state solution just fundamentally feels like a cart before the horse argument.
I mean, think your European Union. European Union wasn't overnight. We had the EC.
Yeah, but European unions were separate states before they became a European Union.
Yeah, and that's my point. But that's why I say that we have to have. But you couldn't have a European community while they're at war or occupying, and one country had no rights and the other one does. It's a process of evolution. And,
sure.
And that's basically what I'm saying. And I think it's easier because economically the countries are unified. To be honest with you, economically they are.
If you're telling me, wait, Justin, if you're telling me that you want a one-state solution and you want to get to that one-state solution via the route of two states that will eventually form a federalized union, then that answers the question, right? But I don't really hear that. I don't hear two states. I hear one state. I hear a rejection of two states.
I think that for me, the end is not, for me, I'm more concerned about right now than I am about the future. And I'll tell you why, because we are facing, we've lost about 100,000 people in Gaza. We probably will lose another 100,000 because of diseases and sickness and after effects. We're losing lands in the West Bank. We're facing, this. So I think that these are, and that final, what you say is one state or a federation or confederation, we still don't know how it's going to look, but we just know that we are two people that live on this land. We have two different identities, and we need to make something in that in the future. Like I said, it could be a binational democratic, one man, woman, one vote, or it could be cantons where people rule locally. But all we need to know is that we have to set it up and see where it goes. So it's like we can't know the future 100%.
Yeah, I'm not really
just know that we have a very bad present. That's all.
I'm not talking about knowing the future so much as like setting a substantive roadmap that can be functionally followed on a political level. Because the things that you're calling for are things that if they were achieved, I wouldn't be against them. But the way to achieve them requires certain steps in the way that I think are like such as a two-state solution, a two-state agreement. That I feel like there's sort of a sweeping under the rug of like the mechanics of how what you want to happen can happen. If you know what I'm saying.
I think my answer answered that. I don't know. Maybe Nazar can explain it better.
Sorry, I was busy trolling Rocksteady Jew. What was the question?
The question is, if your goal, if your end resolution for the conflict is a one state or some form of confederation, do you
I agree with you. Yeah,
believe
that's the.
do you
I
believe
don't-
that a two-state solution is a necessary intermediate goal to realize that long-term goal?
I think that is putting the cart before the horse. What's necessary is consent. It's not necessary to start with the two states. What's necessary is a process that the majority of both people see as legitimate and has a good. So that's where I think we are barking up the wrong tree, trying to predict what could or could not work. No, I think we shouldn't start arguing these things. We should argue what works for each of us. What would that look like? And then how do we get there? Get what I'm saying? So we need to agree on what does it look finally, right?
Okay.
And then reverse engineer how we get there. That's, I think, what we need to work on. But of course, that's not enough if both parties do not trust each other, right? So you need to define the end state, but also define the kind of relationship, make the relationship between the two parties equal.
Okay,
And
I don't know.
that
I don't know what I'm doing there. Like, how much back and forth are we going to?
So yeah, we're gonna end this back and forth. But I
need to go to my next meeting.
Okay, you got to go. But real quick, I just wanted to suggest something. I actually think we should set up another conversation, like a one-on-one between you, Nizar, and you, Simfo, because Simfo, I don't know if you know, but Nizar was actually part of the two-state solution negotiations. And Simfo is someone who's very knowledgeable about two states and still a firm believer in it. And I think you guys can have a very interesting conversation. And I think the community would love to see it. So if you're both down, let me know and we'll arrange that.
I would be open to a debate because Simfo has some very views about why it failed, and he puts a lot of.
Well, we're gonna frame it. We're gonna
it
frame it as a
is
conversation.
bizarre.
We'll frame it as a conversation because it'll be easier to find common ground. But there'll be differences in opinions. So if you guys are down, I'd love to set that up.
Yeah, I mean, Nizar, and I think you should do a hosting session with both him and Nizar. This way they can, because I mean, it's interesting to see a lot of reasons why Simfo think it failed and why Nizar think it's failed. And I think that this is one of the biggest misconceptions we have between Israelis and Palestinians. It's why did Oslo fail? And I think that we have the narratives are just so completely different. But that would be interesting. Anyways, I want to thank Nizar and Dar, as well as the other panel people who joined us today, because I too have to leave. Nizar, it's always a pleasure to speak and to hear from you, and we'll always stay in touch.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you.
I'm going to leave everybody, and thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Nizar, as well.
Thanks.
And Nizar, if you're down for that conversation, we'd love to set it up. So, are you with us? I don't know if maybe Nizar can't hear me again. You can't hear me?
I can hear. I'm just responding to hidden hierarchs.
Oh, okay. Cool. So I don't even know where we take this. There's definitely not the right configuration here that this is going to be civil if it doesn't have strong facilitation. So the question is where we move this to next. Maybe we'll do some Q&A. So Rocksteady, I think you're having a misunderstanding. I've actually never deleted a single YouTube comment in all my years of streaming. I just don't see any reason to do that. But YouTube has an extremely strict auto deletion policy. So there's certain keywords that they pick up on and they'll automatically delete it. So what I suggest you do before posting a comment, save it in your notes. And then if it doesn't save, try to identify what keyword it picked up on and then just repost it with slightly different wording. And maybe even ChatGPT can help you with that. But no, I definitely did not delete your comment.
I need to leave. We'll circle back whenever, yeah.
Okay. Nizar, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure having you here. Such a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, I mean, let's see. It's 11 p.m. here. I'm gonna wrap this up. We just need to decide what we do with the conversation. We could move this over into the chill room. No, is somebody available here who's gonna host, who's willing to moderate? Because it's not gonna work without facilitation. I can tell you all that already.
I'm here, but
Thanks for joining.
just-
Thanks for joining, Rocksteady. I hope you come back soon. And I'm gonna add you to some circles so you'll have access to some different text channels. So you'll see that open up for you. Awesome. So Omar, you'll be here, and maybe who else? Al, maybe someone on the. Maybe we get a Jew as well to do it. Hyrax, I'm gonna unmute you.
Are you saying in the chat room or here?
No, I mean, here might be easier because we could just bring people on and off of stage. I think it might just help it stay. I think it might help it stay civil and stuff. But it's really up to you. Just we just need to make sure it's moderated well. And Hyrax, you're unmuted, but I made it very clear that we're not turning this into debate. And then when you kept ranting, you then literally said Nizar's scared to debate you, but that's not what we're doing here. So you're a smart guy, but I feel like something on the social awareness needs a little like sharpening, which thankfully we could improve with a little bit of work. And I know that's an insult. So I'm gonna give that insult, and I'm also gonna apologize. But you know, we try very hard to keep a certain level of respect and decorum here, and I've been very tolerant with you, honestly. And
too tolerant, I'll say.
Yeah, most people say too tolerant, but you know,
right.
I'm still happy to work with you and have you here on these sessions, but you got to work with me as well. So.
I mean, this Nizar guy became extremely emotional and it wasn't, totally rational in his response. He was starting, if you look at it he started to say, we are the native Palestinians. The reason we have more of an inherent right is because we are different from them. If you look at it from an empirical way, from the way that population displacements were dealt with in the 20th century, there really is nothing unique about what happened to the Palestinian Arabs. If you look at it without bias, he's incredibly emotional and hysterical. Okay? There is nothing unique about ethnic cleansing. This has happened throughout, for the entirety of human history. Okay? And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying this has happened and it will happen in the future. And there's
but I think his point was, Hyrax, I think his point was that
he didn't make it very well, did he?
So I don't know.
He was clouded by his own emotion.
I understood his point. It was
I
that
didn't really.
So what he said was, even if others accept their ethnic cleansing and don't want to return, we're not like that. We do want to return. And I know it's awfully inconvenient for Israelis that Palestinians just happen to be like us in the sense that they do want to return, but that's a reality we're gonna need to come to terms with.
But you were trying to. I know your position, and personally, for me, your position is incredibly naive, and it's you live in a bubble and so on. I don't want to be too personal, but listen, Nizar, and by the way, it's not Nizar's only position. It's not Nizar alone who holds this position of the uniqueness of the cult of the Palestinian right of return. It is, standard discourse in modern intelligentsia, in modern universities. But why is this? Why is this? Partly due to anti-white sentiment and partly due to anti-Jewish sentiment. Because the Jews are seen in modern leftist discourse as a proxy for white people. Irrespective of whether it is true or not, they see all Jews as white colonizers that have stolen the land from the poor native brown people. And,
you're doing the thing again, man.
Can you let me finish?
I agree. I agree with your point on a factual basis, but you have to be able to communicate like an adult.
No, this is the man was not sanguine himself. Listen.
Yeah. Why? Why was he like that?
Because
is it possible? Is it possible that you were abrasive?
It doesn't really look.
Yeah, brother.
no,
Hyrax,
no, no, no.
I really think you don't understand your communication style. Literally, the way you speak about Muslims, you're essentially like Nick Fuentes. Like, think about when you hear Nick Fuentes speak, how much
Look,
that
if
triggers
Nick
you.
Fuentes is right, I don't care. I don't agree with him in the majority of things. You know.
Wait, hold on. Wait, hold on. Think about,
Facts are inconvenient.
think about, I just think about how you feel when Nick Fuentes is talking about Jews. That's how you come off to Muslims. So this whole concept that you think people aren't hearing you or they get triggered by what you say, yeah, you really don't communicate well. You don't communicate in a way that is conducive to finding common ground.
I don't. You know,
It's like it's like if Tommy Robinson and Douglas Murray had a baby, we get the hidden Hyrax. I mean, just bro, reflect on that for a moment.
Okay, but is Tommy Robinson and Murray incorrect, or is it inconvenient? You know,
no, wait, but hold on. Being right is not the only thing that matters. People always say yes, but it's true. I'm giving you just a random example. If you go up to someone on the street that's overweight and like, you're fat, no lie detected, but that's still a dick thing to say. So saying what you believe is true is not enough. If you want to engage in a way where people hear what you have to say and respect your words, you need to communicate it in a certain way. And I imagine, you know, you have a group of friends where you could communicate in this way and you guys all agree and you know, it's an echo chamber. Great. But if you want to reach across the aisle and have people actually listen to what you have to say, you got to change your approach.
I would say the exact same thing about you when you in the last debate about the genocide with this History Speaks guy. It was pretty much an echo chamber, and if you look at the comments, you seem to surround yourself with a lot of mostly Muslims and leftists that you know, share similar points of view to you. And you kept denigrating my point, saying Hasbara just means explanation. Hasbara, and
so you actually you actually want to hear something interesting?
I don't agree with a lot of things the Israeli government does, but fundamentally speaking, I don't even agree with certain elements of Judaism. But what I would say is that the overwhelming, you know, it reminds me of this, you know, after the Fort Hood massacre by this Palestinian Muslim maniac, this American general said, well, it's more important that we don't say anything about Islam in order to keep the peace, even if it's true. And that's really absurd, in my opinion. You know, empirically speaking, if there were no Muslims in America, then the Fort Hood massacre would not have happened. Okay, now that might be cruel and it might be unpleasant, but the Manchester Arena bombing.
Okay, bro. Okay, empirically speaking, if there were no men, then violent crime would reduce by 99%. Well, the reality is,
yes,
the reality is, there's Muslims in society, there's men in society, there's all types of people in society, and we need to work to deal with it. Trying to demonize a segment of the population, generally
demonizing,
generally
flaws in their culture. I'm not demonizing them.
Wait, hold on. Somebody who's incessantly focused on flaws in one's culture, when people do that towards Jews, you would rightfully say they're clearly anti-Semitic. This is actually what the anti-Semite does. This is what they do. They focus on problems they see in Jewish culture and how that impacts Western society, and they make similar claims to you that Jews don't have a role in society. You're not too different from the average anti-Semite. But I just wait. I want to make one more point, because you said something about the Hasbara. So interestingly, after we had that conversation, Simfo here gave me feedback on how I use the term Hasbara. He gave me good feedback, and I acknowledged that he was right. That's the power of good communication. Now, one more point. While I did call what you were doing Hasbara often, I want you to watch that conversation back and try to find a single point you made that I didn't respond to. And if you could find a single point, I will publicly acknowledge it on stream. I give you my word, and this is streaming now, so this is here for the public to see. if you find a single point you made that I refuse to address, I will acknowledge it and I will respond to it. Okay. So it's true. It's true. I called it Hasbara, but you can't say I did not respond to your questions.
You're using it
Now,
pejoratively.
I was using it
That's not something you should do. You shouldn't try to use. How about you make an argument without you using a word in a pejorative way and say, "Oh, that's Hasbara. This is that." He's saying, "Oh, this is Douglas Murray's and Tommy Robinson's child." If they had a child, look, and also your methods of debating. It's like you say poll this. You kind of, I don't know if you're on the spectrum or not, Adar, but you don't seem to understand that.
For fuck's sake, man.
Wait, let me finish my point. Look, because you seem to look at the world as if it is like you're like a computer, and you seem to think that social sciences are actually a thing. They're not. Social science is a social construct, and you seem to be addressing it in an empirical way, saying, "Oh, look, 70. I saw this poll, that poll, that poll." Well, polls are fallible, okay, and you have an over-reliance on ChatGPT. You have an over-reliance on not seeing. You know the English expression, "You can't see the wood for the trees," or "You can't see the forest for the trees." You have built yourself an echo chamber around narratives that suit your agenda, and you feel very comfortable in this kind of world. A lot of yes men are around you, but I think that and you were saying, oh, you were trying to denigrate my points by saying, oh, look, you think your lived experience is less than this poll. Listen, polls, as I said before, they have an agenda. They are paid for by political groups, including conservative ones, including every poll, by left wing, right wing, it doesn't matter. But also, if we look at Corey Gil-Schuster and his, he is biased because he said in one of his interviews that he deliberately goes for more well-dressed Palestinians that seem to be more progressive, more liberal, and yet you will see that's about 95% of the people he asks have a very radical agenda, meaning they want to expel all Israelis, and they support acts of extreme violence and terrorism. And when I said they support killing of a pregnant woman, now I do not know if you went to every single Palestinian in the West Bank and Gaza, and they would support such acts. But, they don't look at, but at the end of the day, they fundamentally see the Jews in the land of Israel as alien Khazarian colonizers, and they see themselves as the true inheritors of the land, and they both as Arabs and Palestinians, but also they see themselves as the custodians of the Muslim Ard al-Muqaddasa, which in and of itself is a kind of a fan fiction form of the Jewish concept of Eretz HaKodesh. So it's just a rehashed version. But anyway, my point is that, and you also seem to not understand that in polls, people don't always tell you the truth, because people will tell you.
All right, Hyrax, I think we're again. You're going in circles again. We got the point. So you actually said a whole lot about how I see the world, how I go about things, but you didn't even make a single point about what you think I'm wrong about. So
you're wrong about your methodology of countering my
argument.
Saying,
no.
This poll, that poll.
Wait, hold on. Polls are a snapshot in time. They are fallible, true, and they are subject to change. But when you come and try to give an opinion based on nothing, that does not carry more weight than polling. I'm sorry. You can't just come and make a claim that's contrary to polling and think that carries more weight. And so that's hold on.
You got wrong.
Wait, hold on. That's one. Two. Wait. One more thing. When it comes to an echo chamber, this community is open to everybody. We don't kick anybody out. What we did was, because there's many different energy types and ideas. We created sub-communities here so people could get along. But this whole idea that we're somehow building an echo chamber, in what world would I give you so much mic time? Somebody whose views I personally think are quite deranged. Why am I giving you the floor? We literally on this right now have a religious Jew here, a Salafist, another Israeli who we have a fair bit of disagreements. And I don't even know people's opinions here, but this is a very diverse crew.
I would just like to point out that you started with rejecting the concept of Poles on their face, just prima facie, and then you immediately invoked an anecdotal sampling from Corey Gill-Schuster.
Well, no, look, you can talk about look. At the end of the day, I mean,
at the end of the day, you either care about methodology or you don't, right?
Wait a minute. Where are you from? Are you a Muslim?
He's Israeli.
I'm listening.
He's Israeli. You're a leftist, right?
No.
No. I mean, look.
But you wanted.
I agreed with you on a factual basis when you started talking. It's you just communicate in a way that is so abrasive to me.
It doesn't, people in the real world that communicate in a, go on X, they communicate in a far more abrasive.
I know. Oh.
Yeah, well, this is the head on. This is the
one specific thing that you got wrong and you were distorting. Can I tell you?
Sure.
One specific point, not the whole thing. Okay.
Yeah, go for it. But try to do it in 60 seconds. Cool, if you can.
I can do it in less than that. You said about Buddhists, and when I said if the Palestinians became Buddhists, there'd be a greater chance of peace, and you cited examples of extreme Buddhist violence. Which I gather you're referring to places like Sri Lanka and Myanmar. But at the end of the day, let me ask you, let's talk about Buddhist migrants in the West. Has there been a single example of Buddhist terrorism by Buddhist migrants in Europe or in America? Yes or no? And if no, why not?
Wait. I'm happy to answer that question, but you still didn't tell me.
Why is Islam inherently more violent than other religions on the earth?
Wait, hold on. What did I distort? That you asked me a question completely irrelevant to what I said. You told me. Wait. Just so we could give people context.
Yeah.
Because you're not being intellectually honest right now. You said, "Where are Buddhists engaging in violence?" I gave you an instance. That topic ended right there. So what did I distort? What did I distort?
Well, where are Buddhists engaging in violence on the scale? And if you look at Buddhism in its core, it is a peaceful religion. The way it is interpreted.
No, fine. But wait, Hyrax, wait. This is a different point. You now want to make the case
Islam is inherently violent.
Okay, wait, hold on. You said I distorted something. What did I distort? What point? You said I was wrong about something. What was I wrong about?
Many things. Well, you
okay,
were wrong about the fact.
Go.
You were wrong. Okay. You were wrong about the fact.
And I want you to do this without going on an anti-Islam tirade. But so tell me what I said that was wrong.
It's not an anti-Islam tirade.
Okay, go.
It's an empirical fact.
Go.
That you were questioning the fact that the majority of Muslims do not have a literalist interpretation of Islam and do not engage disproportionately in extreme violence in other religions.
When
you were saying that things are evolving, and you fundamentally, your approach is a kind of a leftist one from one of moral relativism that believes that all cultures are inherently equal, all people are inherently equal, and that crime is simply due to environmental factors, terrorism is due to environmental factors, and it says that nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with genetics, nothing to do with culture. It does, whether we like it or not. Empirically, there are certain inconvenient truths that are not allowed to be discussed by modern polite society.
So, but Hyrax, again, you're going on one. Wait, Hyrax, you're going on one of these rants again, and you still did not tell me a single thing that I said that was incorrect.
I can't analyze exactly the whole thing. I haven't really looked into it, but your fundamental approach.
So here's what's happening.
Your idea, you were implying that Muslims have the same ability to evolve the way that Europeans did, and I counter that, fundamentally reject that. and there is no evidence that they are. And that's, you know, you were saying, well, you know, in the Middle Ages, Europe X, Y, Z, and look at them now. It could happen with the Muslims too. And I say absolutely not. It never will, and it's going backwards. And you are fundamentally in your discourse, you were distorting it and trying to say that you were trying to muddy the waters, obfuscate the truth. That's what I'm saying. It wasn't like a specific fact that you were saying this is false.
Okay. So it's essentially just an area of disagreement. You're not able to demonstrate something I said that was wrong. We just have an area of disagreement. You think that there? Wait, hold on. You think that there is something inherently bad about Muslims that cannot be changed, and I
didn't say bad. You're saying
okay, fine. Inherently violent about Muslims that cannot be changed. That's your position. My position, which I explained very clearly, is that culture supersedes religion, and you see this when you look at Muslim populations around the world. They're vastly different from one another, and obviously all humans can change, and there's nothing about a Muslim that makes them unchangeable. So for you to say this is just incorrect, no. What I'm saying is actually what I'm saying is based on reality. If Islam was extremely deterministic of outcome, then we would see way more similarities between every single Muslim culture. But the difference between Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, Palestine, and Kazakhstan are vastly different. So clearly there's something else at play here.
It's not the only factor, but it's
but again, clearly there's so much beyond religion. I mean, that's just demonstrated. This isn't.
You want to talk about genetics? You want to talk about?
No. Okay, hold on. The reason I don't want to talk about genetics is because there's literally no solution to that. We could. Are there perhaps genetic differences between different ethnic groups? Not perhaps. There are. There's no solution. I'm interested in talking about solutions. Culture can change. Systems and institutions can change. So that's what I like to talk about. What the hell is the point of focusing on why thinking some people are genetically inferior to others? That's what Nazis. That's literally a Nazi argument. You don't understand.
Look, Werner von Braun was right about rocket science. Does that mean that I reject him because he's a Nazi? No, I reject Nazi ideology.
Okay.
At the end of the day,
so the Nazis were right about something. Wait, hold on.
No, people do not reject.
Genetic difference.
It's true. Genetic inherent differences, even between.
Okay, fine. So you would agree. So the issue is not Islam because there's no Muslim gene. So
it is Islam. It is Islam.
Wait, so what does that have to do with genetics?
Genetics makes it even worse.
So what is it? The Arab genes you don't like?
Look, fundamentally speaking, Greek Cypriots and Levantine Arabs are not so radically different genetically. Okay, they probably have more in common genetically than, say, Northern Europeans and Greek Cypriots.
Mm-hmm.
Yet there is a world of civilizational and cultural difference between Greek Cypriots and Arab Muslim Levantines. Why is
that? What has to do with DNA?
Because genetics don't actually matter, and focusing on them is.
This matters so.
Yeah, I mean, bro, this is
Palestinians are Levantine. You denigrate my arguments because it doesn't suit your agenda.
No, you just countered your own argument.
You're not coherent, my guy. There's nothing.
Yes, I am. I'm saying that genetics is a factor. It is not, but the religion is the far greater factor. Culture. Culture and religion are so deeply intertwined in the Middle East that, if you look at Iraq, okay, people go on the lines of, are you Sunni, are you Shia? Fundamentally, among the Arabs, that is it, okay? And that your life will depend on it. Whether you want to keep, your aortic artery intact, it depends on whether you are Shia or Sunni in the right place or at the wrong time. Because can you look at any other culture on planet Earth that has a propensity to use such levels of extreme violence when they take offense. If you say something about the Buddha, will a Vietnamese migrant in Germany go on a rampage and shoot a school?
Hyrax, you literally the only stream you have is just Islamophobic rants. It's just not what we're here to do. The same way. I'll give some space for this, but the same way we wouldn't just let an anti-Semite come and talk about how the Jewish religion is incompatible with Western society and how they're genetically inferior and how they can't be trusted. That's just not what we're here to do. You could go look for a space where you could have like an anti-Muslim circle jerk. This isn't a place for it. If you want to be here in order to meet Muslims and get to know them and build connections with people on the other side, that's what we're here to do. You're welcome to stick around to do that, but we're just not going to keep giving you the stage for this bullshit.
You know,
there's enough toxicity. Yeah, we're going to give the floor to other people. Yeah.
Can I ask this? This is not an anti-Muslim thing. I'm just interested.
All right, let him ask the last question, and then we're going to move on.
I just want to say one.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just want to say.
Wait, Danny, hold on. Danny, hold on. Hyrax, go.
I would like to ask the Salafi's opinion on what he thinks about Sheikh Al-Albani's opinion that it is right for the Palestinians to leave the land of Israel in order to save their lives until the day that they are strong enough to fight the Jews, and he believes that the fighting violently is futile. Because many Salafis...
No. You asked your question. No, this is what you do. You do a question and then a rant. Question, rant. That's your style. not here, my guy. Anyways, next.
Can I just say one?
Yeah, Danny, all you.
I just want to say that, Adara, I agree with you that this person, Hyrax, you're racist, and I don't think you belong in a group like that. This is just discrimination. This is insulting to me as a Jewish Israeli, and it's just a shame. I don't know what you even expect to get from any dialogue with this kind of like superiority opinions about other human beings. This is just so depressing. I don't know what else to say.
I agree. As a religious Jew, I have to say this whole eugenics thing is like nonsensical. We are not here to talk about Islam, okay? Like, you can have you can go to one of those political that are crazy.
Anti-Semitism on the other point of the mirror.
At least we know the Nazis weren't wrong about everything, right? That's his gem of the evening.
Yeah,
they were right about ballistics.
I actually think if we do want to, like, it's an intellectually correct point that just because you're a Nazi doesn't mean everything you say is wrong. But when you're copying Nazis on eugenics and genetic inferiority, that's not the area where Nazis were right. Anyways, who else wants to share? We have some new people here.
I don't mind saying
can I share?
Yeah, Pizza Slice. We haven't heard from you yet. Yep.
Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So I just have a very quick question about the health ministry. So like, I know that they're very reliable at this moment, but I actually haven't kept up with them in the start of the conflict. I heard that from the start of the conflict, actually, they were taking a lot of their sources from the Gaza Media Organization. Like, I'm not exactly sure if you've heard about that.
Yeah.
So obviously the Gaza Media Organization, like, I don't know if all of their stats are reliable. Like,
they're not reliable. So Gaza Media Office definitely is not reliable. So first of all, I would actually recommend you reach out to Gabriel Epstein about this, because there's nobody who has looked into this more detailed than him. But just quickly on
from
this.
the Washington Institute.
What's up?
From the Washington Institute.
Exactly. Now, the first analysis he put out, we spoke about. Like, we have some fundamental disagreements, but his knowledge of the reporting of death toll is second to none. He's really on top of it. The Gaza like sometimes we'll hear the claim 70% of those killed have been women and children. This comes from the Gaza Media Office. There's no basis to that. At the very beginning,
right now, right?
no, women and children is 50 something percent, but we don't know. There could be a fair bit of combatants that are not on the list, so it could actually be under 50%.
I mean, the GMO is making that claim right now, right? Because the media organization is making that claim right now.
I'm not sure. We need to check that, but that's where the claim comes from. It comes from them. Now, at the beginning, some of the daily reporting, at least on social media, the Ministry of Health was just taking media office reports. The only thing we should really pay attention to more than anything, the daily reporting from Ministry of Health does seem these days accurate for the most part. Sometimes they retroactively add because they see there were more deaths that weren't accounted for. But the gold standard, the only thing we should really trust is the list they release every few months, because that is open source for anyone to review and scrutinize. And Israel, having access to the Palestinian population registry, can themselves check this list and see that all the names are legitimate. So the only thing that we should give weight to is the actual raw data that they release, and that tells us a lot about death toll, at the very least what the minimum death toll is.
So from the original, like from the start of the conflict, when they had the GMO numbers, like is that right now like fixed? Like is that verified? So for example, like if they said like a certain amount of people died early on in the conflict, and they've taken that number from the GMO, and right now, like is that number like still included in the list, or is that taken out? If you know what I mean.
The daily death tolls do match the total. Yeah, but I imagine most people here are less interested in this. So, Pizza, if you want, you and I can have a one-on-one chat about this to go deeper. But when it comes to the daily reporting stuff, Gabriel's really the guy to ask about that. But feel free to shoot me a DM. I'm happy to talk more about this. But more than anything, it's the raw data list that we could rely on. Daily reports, and especially stuff from the GMO, should be taken with a grain of salt.
Obsessive.
Cool.
Oh.
Cool.
Can I make a question?
Yeah,
the question I had before when people were laughing at it.
Yeah, and then we'll give it to Serge. Yep.
So the question is, let me remember properly, see if I can remember the full question. It was that if, hypothetically speaking, in the kingdom of the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, the Hashemite dynasty is overthrown by a democracy movement or anything of the sort, and as you know, the majority of the population in the country is consider themselves Palestinians, and they take over the country and exert their sovereignty over it. Do you think this, and they exert their sovereignty over it, or they create their own country or whatever? Do you think this will be or anybody here think this will be a competing claim or a competing problem with the general Palestinian movement?
I think I'm bummed we didn't get to ask that when the Palestinians were still on the panel. But my take on it, I don't know if that would create. I think that would work in service of expanding Palestine at that point. Like if Palestinians take over the Jordanian government, I think that they will probably then work to liberate the West Bank. That's probably my take on it. But we should ask.
Do you think they will work together instead of having to compare leaderships and stuff like that, like happened in Gaza?
I don't know. Hard to say. Unity is not. Palestinians still have not achieved like this governmental unity, so it's unclear. You might then have three factions. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if you do. But sometimes people band together for a common goal. I'm not sure. This is purely speculative. Maybe someone else wants to chime in on this, but if not, we'll.
No, just in the context of what you were saying now, I think that kind of speaks to a broader point that a lot of the let's call it prescriptions that are given by Palestinians don't really deal with the fact that they do not have the organizational unity required to make any sort of action. It's kind of an issue, and like even in the case in which Palestinians became sovereign over Jordan, which is a huge improvement in their position, there's still no guarantee that they would be sufficiently let's say sufficiently organized in the same direction to be able to bring forward any sort of like agreement and have the ability to internally police that agreement. And I think that's a big problem that needs to be needs to be addressed in any conversation about cantonization or one state solution or a federal system. Just broadly, any solution that you bring up, you have to address the fact that Palestinians need to be able to get behind that solution, and they need to be able to bring in line the elements in Palestinian society that don't want to do so willingly.
Okay, so you're saying that this possible case is not exactly feasible in any time soon.
That Palestinians overthrow the Hashemites and that specific scenario?
Yeah.
I don't know enough about Jordanian politics to make any statement on the feasibility of that.
I was speaking to a friend of mine who's Jordanian in college, and he comes from one of the main clans of Jordan, but not in the city, more like in the north section of it, which is a more Jordanian area. The south and the center of the country is more Palestinian. And he obviously is pro-Palestine and all this stuff. I mean, no questions asked. But when I confronted him about the following, I told him, in your country, the people who consider themselves Jordanian and not Palestinian are around 30% of the population of the citizenship, people with citizenship population. Nonetheless, they're the ones who comprise the majority of the military and the majority of economic power, and the political power and all this stuff. Do you think that if tomorrow there's a democracy in your country and the king is overthrown, do you really think that status will stay in place? And do you want that to happen? And obviously he gave me a very mixed answer, because he seemed to be in agreement that he doesn't want his country, Jordan, to stop being a country in which they have the power. But at the same time, he wants the Palestinians to have political rights in Palestine. And I don't know if he will disagree to. I think he thinks it's a just conclusion, but I don't think it's a conclusion he wants for them taking over Jordan. I think that's what many Jordanians may be feeling, and what made the reason why to this day Jordan is not very Palestinian friendly politically.
Guys, what I think we're gonna do. What's that, Altoids?
No, it was to Seinfeld, just answering, by the way.
Okay, yeah. Thanks. We're gonna wrap up the live stream, but we'll just continue the stage. So Al, if you want to host, Omar, Hyrax, look, unfortunately you probably won't be unmuted for this session, but for the next one, yeah, you're welcome to join. Yeah, so you're asking, can you join next time? Yeah, I'll stream this weekend and you could join then. Responding to a comment on Instagram from Jonathan Buckenmeyer, saying, and the racism card predictably being played upon criticism of the culture. Yeah, I'll tell you why. So the same way, damn, this light fixture causing me problems today. The same way, if a Muslim were to come on and want to rant about problems in Jewish culture, or a white person were to want to come on and rant about problems in Black culture, this just is not the platform where that's what we're trying to do. In fact, I would go on to say, I think all three of those groups have problems in their culture. and they should be worked on. They should be addressed. But no group of people is receptive to demonizing language from another group. So if you want to talk about cultural problems, it needs to come from within the group, or it needs to be done very compassionately with people of that group that you have a relationship with. So again, it's all about what is this platform for and what are we trying to do? There's so much toxicity out there. There's so much garbage on the internet. We're trying to do a little something different here. So yeah, we're just not going to give a free platform for people to spew demonizing and hateful rhetoric. There's a lot of places where you could find that. It won't happen here. But in terms of like my personal opinion, I would say most groups have some cultural issue that needs to be addressed. Yeah, fuck, call me a mega racist. All groups are problematic, right? But again, I try to keep my racism to behind closed doors. You know what I'm saying? So, anyways, hope that clarifies. And with that, we're going to wrap up the stream tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to have Zach Kerner on for a little discussion/debate. He's been on a few times, so tune in for that. And if you want to continue the conversation, just come to Discord. I'm going to drop a link, or you can find it in my bio on Twitter, or you can find it in the description. Hope to see you there. And with that, we're signing off.